I'm thinking that people who have seen the animation are gonna struggle to see past all the stuff that was cut and notice the things that they're doing that are excellent. I get it. Like, nobody's saying that this is better than the animation, but did they honor the source material? Were they able to reduce the animation into 1/3 of the story, but still hold that soul? I think they did it. Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to that channel. If you're new, I'm a developmental editor. My job is to help writers to improve their storytelling. On this channel, I take source material and their adaptations, and I compare the two to see which one is doing a better job at telling a great story, and then I discuss why certain choices are either better or worse for telling that story in the new medium. Now, I am a huge fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was one of the OG fans watching it as it was airing, so I know this material very, very well. I actually use it as a reference for my clients, saying you should like watch this show and study the hell out of it because they really know how to tell good character stories. So we're gonna be doing a deep dive into Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix live action adaptation, season 2. If you haven't seen my season 1 deep dives, you can find links to that up there and down in the description. But we're gonna start in right here on episode 1 of season 2, which I think was a huge improvement from season 1. And I know a lot of folks are gonna be like, well, no, they changed a lot more. They did the exact things that I thought that they needed to. At the end of my season 1 deep dives, I put out a video where I discussed the things that I think that they really need to fix before doing season 2, or when they go into season 2. Otherwise, I felt like this show was just gonna peter out and die. And they fixed literally every single one of those. It was the dialogue had to be fixed, the blocking, which is where actors just walk in and stand there, deliver their lines, and then they leave. I also wanted to have more plot cut out, which I know is a big thing for somebody who's such a huge fan of Avatar, the animation, to say, but I think that in order to make this live action feel better, you need to cut more of the original story out. Why? Because we just crammed in as much plot as possible in that first season to the point that it was suffering in the experience. We could watch that and go and feel like they are rushing through so much. Even if you had no familiarity with the animation, you would watch that show and say, there's a lot of exposition, we're just pushing this plot forward and keeping it going and moving, and we're not stopping and breathing in a lot of these character moments. Character breathing is when there is no progression in the plot, there is no real progression in the characters, but we as the audience are able to sit in a character's current position and experience and ponder what that position really is. You can even use that moment to explore it a little deeper. And that just did not happen much in the first season. And we really need that for a show and a story that did what the original animation did, except they did it with little tiny plots that went here and there all along these journeys. But in a more straightforward narrative like we're having in the live action, you need to be able to pause and let your characters have those breathing moments where they're needed so that the audience can settle into new positions. Anyway, we're gonna talk about a lot of this as we're going, so I'm not gonna continue discussing it here at the beginning. We're just gonna dive right in. But before we do, please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's totally free for you, and for me, it might boost this video on the algorithm. I don't actually really make any money off of these videos. They're all demonetized. But if you have the means and you're feeling generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. You can become a subscriber even for just $1 a month, or you can leave me a one-time tip even for just $1. I really appreciate anything. And if you're already a patron of mine, thank you so much for supporting me. I know a lot of you guys join me because of my Wheel of Time videos, but this is something that is a passion project for me, so I really appreciate you guys supporting me even through this. Oh yeah, and final notes. I do speak more slowly than most YouTubers, so you might want to watch me at 1.5 to 2 times speed, or if you find that I'm talking about something that is boring to you, you can skip ahead in the timeline. I've actually separated this all out into chapters. You can just jump to the part that you think would be more interesting. And there's something else. Oh yes, spoilers for all of Avatar: The Last Airbender, like the animation and the live action. I'm going to be talking about this show from beginning to end, so if you were only going to be watching episode 1 because that's the one that I'm critiquing, maybe finish the show first and then come back. That's it. Let's get into this. First off, usually I start out these videos by talking about, well, I will talk about the episodes from the animation that were covered, but we're going to talk about the themes first. Now, in season 1, it was pretty clear that there were specific themes chosen for each individual episode, and then all the plots, there was an attempt to kind of tailor those plots to that theme. And for season 2, it looks like they've kind of put that aside and said, we're not going to do that too much. We're mostly going to focus on this as one big story. And I think that was a really good choice, because writing the other way, where you have each episode as its own theme, is extremely hard. I noted this in my episode 3 review, which was the best episode of season 1 when it comes to writing like this. It wrote so tightly to a specific theme that I was impressed. This is something that you see in very high-level writing. Even though there was problems with the dialogue and the pacing and stuff like that, that was something that was very impressive. I've got my degree in English literature, and that is what we study in the super highbrow literature that you're forced to read in college. I don't see that done in contemporary literature, like, ever. I mean, maybe once or twice in my entire career as an editor, which is 25 years of editing, I've seen that done. So I was extremely impressed with that, but it is extremely hard to do. So I think that throwing that plan out and saying, let's just focus on the season as its one contained theme, I think that was a good idea. I do see some focuses in some of these episodes, but they're more related to the character arcs and less focused on let's have everybody's character arcs adhering to this one specific theme. And I think that was a good idea. Unless I missed something, which I might have. I've only watched the show through 3 times this second season. Sometimes when I'm editing them, or I mean, not editing, when I'm critiquing them, I pick up on things and go, oh, that's a theme. Yeah, the closest thing I can find to a theme in this first episode is maybe being somewhere you don't want to be and taking that first step to either get away from it or get to where you would rather be. It's hard to say if this was a deliberate choice, because this is what you would do at this stage in the story. You would get everyone started on their journey. Yeah, Zuko's really unsatisfied with where he is, and so he sets off to go do something else. Team Avatar had a plan for what they were going to do, trying to find an earthbending teacher, but then they realized that they've got this comet coming, so now they have to go and warn the Earth King, so that's setting off to go do something else. And each of the members of Team Avatar are kind of experiencing a shift as well. Katara starting to think about what is her role going to be now that she's not really needed as Aang's teacher anymore. Sokka is being faced with not being able to put aside his past relationship and open up for a new relationship. Little less adherence there. And Aang had this happen on a few different levels. He was nervous about learning healing as the final step of learning waterbending, but he did it and it paid off for him in the end. He was leading everybody to a safer place, while at the same time looking for an earthbending teacher, but now he's found out he doesn't have an earthbending teacher, so he needs to find a new one, but he also needs to warn the Earth King about this comet that's coming. And Azula thought that she was going to take Ba Sing Se with her great big epic plan, but that ended up being taken away from her, and now she has this new mission that she doesn't really want to do, but she's setting forth on it anyway. So there you go. Everybody is looking for somewhere safe. Anyway, we're going to talk right now about the episodes in this first episode, the episodes from the animation in this first episode that were covered. And a special thank you to the person who did all that research and then just decided to share it with me. That was so helpful. I basically got the animation memorized. Like, I could quote random scenes from this show. It took hours of work in season 1 for me to make sure that all of my references were accurate. Like, if I had a random quote from a character, I wanted to make sure I had it from the right episode. But here's what we got for the live action. The waterbending scroll from season 1 of the animation. That's basically Katara is teaching Aang how to waterbend. The Siege of the North Part 1. And this is really just the part where we see that Katara has gotten a lot better, but so has Aang. He just doesn't take it as seriously, except that in the live action, we're not doing the whole he doesn't take it seriously thing. The return to Omashu, and this is all the stuff with Aang setting Bumi free, or in this case, visiting Bumi and finding out that he's not going to be teaching him earthbending. He has to find somebody else who is a master of neutral Jing. We also have Azula recruiting Mai and Ty Lee and turning her attention from Zuko to the Avatar. The Serpent's Pass, obviously. The Avatar state, which is just Aang's fear of the Avatar state. He also kind of connects with Sokka in that episode where we see him wake up in the middle of the night, I'm talking about the animation, and just tell Sokka, who is in support of Aang trying to go into the Avatar state, and just tell him, I don't think we should be doing this. I've got a bad feeling about it. And Sokka just kind of like, oh, okay. And he's like, Aang is like, do you think that General Fong is going to be upset about it? And Sokka goes, what's he gonna say? You're the Avatar. Who knows better than you? Like, immediately just supporting Aang and him deciding this is something I don't want to do anymore. The Winter Solstice Part 2, and this is the gang learning about Sozin's comet. And I do want to point this out. In the animation, they find out about the comet in the Winter Solstice Part 2. And then we see Aang is worrying about it in the moonlight as Appa is flying away. But then the next episode, he's pacing around on Appa's saddle, worried about it for like 1 minute. And then Katara going, calm down, I can just teach you some of the waterbending I've learned. And then they land and start learning waterbending, and it's like, yay, no problem at all. And then from that moment forward, we never hear about the comet coming again for 21 episodes. The next time we hear about the comet is in season 2, The Library. And we only hear about it because Sokka's going, man, we should really do something to prepare for this upcoming battle. Like we need to invade the Fire Nation, before this all happens. They go into the library, and it's in the library when he finds out about, the darkest day in Fire Nation history, and he goes into the planetarium. Well, he goes off to the Fire Nation section, and then he gets led to the planetarium. It isn't until they're in the planetarium that he brings up, like, the comet, and we should really try to find a day that's good to attack between now and the comet. The fact that they didn't bring up Sozin's comet, like when Aang was basically told by Master Paku that he's not going to teach him anymore, and they didn't but there's a huge comet that's going to come and give the Fire Nation a ton of power. We shouldn't delay me learning how to waterbend. And he didn't bring it up to General Fong in the beginning of the next season. And then he didn't bring it up all these other times that this is urgent. He really needs to learn how to waterbend and earthbend and firebend before the comet arrives. And it just wasn't a concern. We didn't see Aang even stressing about the comet coming until season 3. I just have to, I had to comment on that, because that's, as much as I think that the animation is basically perfect, you didn't need to bring it up. It's a kid's show, and it's got, 22 to 24 episodes per season, so relax. We can just tell this story, and when we get to the end, we get to the end. But these sort of things don't fly as easily in live action because we in our gut feel that it's real because these are real people acting these things out. So if somebody told you the end of the world is coming by the end of summer, and then you see a kid goofing off instead of actually working, you kind of go, that's not, I don't think most people would lose their stress completely for 21 episodes. And that's like a whole season's worth of episodes. But anyway, yeah, so they find out about Sozin's comet here. No specific date given as to when it's coming, which I think was a good choice. Then we get a little bit of Aang liking Katara, and for that was in the animation, The Fortune Teller and the Cave of Two Lovers. And in the Cave of Two Lovers, we also had where Zuko says that Iroh's name is Mushi, so we get that here. We also have the swamp, and this is mainly Zuko's story, Zuko being frustrated with their new life as fugitives. So in the animation, it's where they're begging on the streets in a town and they're kind of getting abused. And then Zuko just cannot handle it anymore, and he becomes the blue spirit in order to rob people to give themselves more comfort and stuff. We don't have that, but we have him being frustrated with their position as fugitives. In the episode Lake Laogai in the animation, Iroh talks about how he wants to open his own tea shop, and so we do have that in the live action here as well. And then also Avatar Day, again, Zuko's stuff, where he leaves Iroh. That happens in this first episode. And then we've got the Siege of the North Part 2, and that is in the animation at the very end. We saw that Ozai tasks Azula with something. It's ambiguous, but he did preempt his "I have a task for you" with him talking about how Iroh is a traitor and Zuko is a failure. So is she going to retrieve them? Is she going to kill them? Is she going to take over looking for the Avatar? We never get to hear what those orders actually were, but we do get to hear Azula making a claim as to what her orders were. And then finally is a little bit of a reference from the drill in the animation. So we find out Azula's plan to attack Ba Sing Se, except she's not going to use a drill. She is going to just plant an army outside of the city and then use her earthbenders to dig underneath and tunnel underneath into the interior of the city. All right, we're gonna jump straight on in. I'm not gonna talk about the new intro, which I thought was glorious, because that kind of feeds right into the Team Avatar storyline. And I do break these up by arc. So we're looking at Team Avatar in one shot, we're gonna look at Azula in one shot, and we're gonna look at Zuko in one shot. But we're gonna start out with Azula, starting with the shortest one first and ending on the long one. First off, I just have to comment that all the cinematography in this show looks spectacular, way better than season 1, which is mostly shot in the volume, so it looked very artificial. Here, They're clearly in real locations, in beautiful, huge sets. And also, when I talk about the cinematography, I don't just mean that it's nicely lit. I'm also talking about the use of the camera. We're seeing the camera moving around a lot more, making this place feel like a real lived-in place. We're also seeing much longer shots and letting the moments play out rather than cutting to medium shots to keep everybody focused on one head. This is a much more mature style of cinematography and directing, and I just like that. And I think it's more appropriate for this story. A story that, although it was made for kids, it touched on some pretty complex, deeper issues, just touched on them. And for live action, you can't just touch on them without it feeling like you're skipping over some important stuff. So here you have to indulge in that a little bit more, and they've updated how they're presenting this as well. So I like that a lot. All right, so the first scene for Azula is we're in this giant war room. And we've got Azula is there. There is a couple of a bunch of Fire Nation army leaders. And then we've got our first and only appearances of Lee and Lo.
Can't you tell? It's Lo and me.
Anyway, I just really liked the way that they used Lee and Lo in this. So we've got this guy named Admiral Kaga and General Lee, who's got his kung fu beard going on, which I really like.
What are you gonna say? The truth, because he already knows. The truth is open to interpretation.
General Lee, what is the status of our holdings in the Earth Kingdom?
After Princess Azula's brilliant conquest in the city of New Ozai, certain skirmishes continue.
Skirmishes?
Losses, my exalted Fire Lord.
Pretty language. Pretty enough for last words.
Ozai relieves the general of command and adds Admiral Kaga to the firing as well, saying, and that's not open to interpretation, indicating that he knew Admiral Kaga was going to be less than truthful to him.
Make room underground for 2 new prison guards.
I do like the villain's stooge. It's really fun. This whole first scene felt just a little bit off to me. And I don't mean the whole scene, but like the beginning part of it here. And I think part of it might have been because Ozai's comment—
what is the status of our holdings in the Earth Kingdom?
—feels a bit like he doesn't actually know what's going on in the war. That's just a very broad comment. Like I would want to narrow it down. Like he's called this meeting to ask about something very specific, because then it would be like, he knows what the general status of the war is. He's coming to ask about one in particular thing, and more particular than our holdings in the Earth Kingdom, because that is literally the entire war for them. They're not really fighting the Water Tribe anymore because the Southern Water Tribe doesn't exist, and the Northern Water Tribe, well, they're barely hanging on, but they tried, and I don't think they're trying anymore. So it's really just the Earth Kingdom. So what is the status of our holdings in the Earth Kingdom? That's just like basically asking, how's the war going? And I just don't think that Ozai would not know in general. So maybe asking about something more specific. I said another option is that he comes in with just aura, like the guys already know why they're there. And then he gives kind of like a death glare to the admiral and the general and just asks status. Like they know why they're here and he knows why they're there. And now he's just putting them on the spot.
Remember, less is more.
And then you can drop that this is an update on the Earth Kingdom in the dialogue that we get from General Lee. So he can say, after Princess Azula's brilliant conquest in the city of New Ozai, north and westward holdings in the Earth Kingdom remain strong. He's talking about north and westward from Omashu itself. And then he can say, trying to avoid saying the truth, while skirmishes to the east continue. So that would be towards Ba Sing Se. And I said I think I would have changed this because Ozai, as established in season 1, sees no progress as a loss. General Lee should recognize that because he was there at the previous War Council in season 1, and he was also there for the Agni Kai. I think he's more perceptive. This is why he was the one who was saying, like, Ozai already knows how the war is going. So I would have had him being the more perceptive one here and recognizing that there's no point in me just saying losses because he knows that. No progress is a loss in Ozai's mind. I would have had him try to avoid saying losses and just say failures to advance the line, or whatever the appropriate terminology would be for a general to use. Basically, the front line isn't moving because he knows Ozai would see that as a loss. And I would definitely have Lee and Lo have something to say about that. Anyway, Ozai moves the conversation on, starting with this very interesting line. Princess Azula, the family has always been blessed by the wisdom of its second children. The floor is yours. And this is going to become like a season-long theme for Azula, circling around Azula, the idea of the second child overtaking the older child. We'll especially see it in the later episode where we have the parable of the two dragons. I'm really glad that the live action recognized this pattern in the royal family of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Fire Nation in Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it is a pattern where the younger is taking the position that should have been occupied by the older. Again, for folks who've been following my channel, I do really love Chinese historical dramas where we do get to see the complexities of palace politics, and my favorite story or genre of these stories is the war for the title of crown prince. It's just so fun to see. You've got parents who are setting their kids against each other and kids who are trying to undermine the work of others. It's fun. I like it. They started doing that in season 1, and we're seeing kind of a continuation of that here. And the animation did do this. I just don't know if it was a conscious choice that they played into this trope of Chinese literature or storytelling. I said, yeah, part of these succession war stories are things like the king setting his sons against each other, so that way whichever one comes out on top was obviously the best one to be the next king. So it's like throwing 3 snakes in a pit, and the one that devours the other 2 is named the King of the Cobras. I said, I love this, and I'm so glad that the season is doing this. I think that it serves this story really well. So backtracking a bit here. I don't think Ozai really cares about either of his children. All he cares about is which one is going to gain him more power, or gain the Fire Nation more power. Either way, he sees himself, I think, as the Fire Nation. So the rest of this I liked. So Azula presents why the generals failed, and then proposes a new plan. And it looks like more of the same at first, until she reveals that her plan is to do what the Fire Nation has been doing as a set pattern in the live action, where there's something to distract from where the real investment in the plan is. So for her, she's going to plant a huge force just outside of the city, drawing the Earth Kingdom's attention to that huge force, while she has her earth-bending prisoners tunnel under the city, and then she can release troops to the interior of the city, and they can destroy it from within while they're, defending the wall, basically. And I can't believe I missed this. So this channel is called The Sword and the Pen because I'm a fencer. I was a very competitive fencer for many, many years. And I'm also an editor. I've seen The Princess Bride like 100 times. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that movie, and I did not catch.
You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia.
Land war in Earth Kingdom. Classic blunder.
I totally missed it until one of my patrons pointed it out to me. Good Princess Bride reference there. Anyway, then Ozai starts dropping all of this praise onto Azula for having a brilliant plan, but he sort of needles her with like, it's about as good of a plan as I could have come up with at your age, like she's no better than he is.
It is approved under the direction of a talented, decorated prodigy of the agile younger generation. General Tran.
Thank you, Fire Lord Ozai. I will do my utmost to repay the trust you have bestowed upon me tenfold.
My personal preference is not to do the bait and switch where he's like talking her up about how great she is, or, giving praise to an anonymous figure that seems like it's her and then going, actually, it's General Tran. He's the one who's going to do this. To me, I see that. I saw it coming from a mile away. It's a trope that you do. A lot of people like it. I don't care for it in particular because I feel like it's very obvious. So it doesn't have the effect on big audiences like it used to the first few times that it's been done. Now, it's been done to death, is what I think.
Azula, you have feelings about my decision to put General Tran in charge of your mission. Speak freely.
Of course, I trust your judgment.
You truly are blessed with the blood of your ancestors. You want to fight, to conquer. But for you, I have a special mission.
Well, Father, you gave Ba Sing Se to Tran, and I can't conquer Amashu twice, so what is it you desire?
Your brother, Zuko.
Zuko is dead. He died in the north after turning traitor and attacking Admiral Zhao. Even if he were alive, you yourself declared him a war criminal.
And I have decided to pardon him. Zuko is alive and hiding out in a far-flung corner of the Earth Kingdom. I want you to retrieve him.
Retrieve him? And do what?
Bring him home. It's time to get our family in order.
I serve at the pleasure of the Fire Lord.
I do have a little bit of an issue with how this was presented, because I'm like 100% sure that this is not really what Ozai cares about. I think that he's planting Azula in a position that she can be pitted against Zuko. Like Zuko will be a threat to Azula and the Fire Nation if he doesn't get killed, or if he pits Azula against Zuko and Zuko wins, then he can come back and become the new heir. And either way, it's like he will win no matter what happens. That's what I think is going on. Now, in the first season, it was more obvious that that's what Ozai was doing with, well, it wasn't that particular thing, but it was more obvious what he was doing with Zuko. And in the second season, just the way this conversation played out, that didn't feel as obvious. And even though you don't usually want things to be obvious, you want people to be able to pick these things up on, rewatches or catch things that they didn't notice. But I've watched this scene many, many times, and I don't see any indication that Ozai is anything other than 100% sincere with Azula in this moment, going, I've decided to pardon him. And I think part of that is because I don't really buy that Ozai would feel a need to explain himself to Azula. And that's what this kind of comes across as. I feel like he would more just criticize her for not behaving in a way that is becoming of an heir to the throne, and just like leave it at that. Like he would just continue to criticize and push her. And I don't see him explaining himself like this. Well, I've decided to pardon him. I think he would just say that he's going to, and like shut up and go do your job kind of a thing. And it just felt a little bit too like he was giving her an excuse. I almost wanted to see more of the two of them butting heads face to face, like she's pushing on him and he's pushing back. But of course he is in the superior position of power, so he will always win. Then out in the hall, we get this interesting interaction between Azula and General Tran, the guy who's been given the mission that she planned. Like she planned how to attack Ba Sing Se and capture Ba Sing Se, and Ozai just gave that mission to this guy. And she doesn't want to have anything to do with him, but he reveals that he sees her already as the future Fire Lord. And they did a good job. Like all this dialogue was good. I would not have changed a single thing about it. I think it was perfect. He's essentially buying favor from the future Fire Lord. So it's an early investment on his part. And she certainly likes this, and seeing herself as the Fire Lord, being recognized in that position already, is kind of working on her. But she doesn't let it be known. She's like, okay, I'll consider this, basically, is what she says. But you can tell that she liked that. I did see some weird comments about people saying that this scene was actually Azula somewhat showing that she has ambitions to overthrow her father. I did not get that at all. This is about getting the title Crown Prince, like she basically getting the recognition that she is the one, which is what she said in season 1. So I'm not sure how people are getting that interpretation. Maybe it's because when he said the Fire Lord, she thought that he was calling her the Fire Lord, like, ooh, I like that. Yeah, I should get rid of my dad and just be the Fire Lord myself. That she's playing by the rules, or at least her father's rules. She wants to be named the next Fire Lord, and that's what the whole rest of the season is about. With, especially the Parable of the Two Dragons, where she sees herself as the underdog, the one who should take out this nuisance of a guy who does not actually deserve to be the next Fire Lord. And so I don't think this scene is at all insinuating that she's going to try to overthrow her father, or that she's even thinking that. She just wants to be recognized as the one. She wants to be named the next Fire Lord. And that's why I think it'll set up the finale of season 3 really well if she is named the Fire Lord and it's not enough. Sort of like the whole thing that we get with Zuko in that season as well, where he gets what he thought he wanted and it wasn't what he really wanted.
If your father wants him back, does that mean his banishment is lifted?
But he's not coming home in a good way, right? It's more like, come home, the Fire Lord is mad at you. Oh, or disappointed, that's worse.
Unknown. As usual, my father's intentions are a mystery.
Well, new Ozai's fallen apart since he left my father in charge. If I never see another crumbling boulder again, I might almost be happy. I heard she rescued you from the circus.
Me? Oh, yeah, I'm so rescued.
There's only so far you can go into the forest before you start to come out of the forest.
Ooh, philosophy.
For this next scene, I recorded about 15 minutes worth of commentary, and then in post, I was like, I gotta reduce this to about 8. And then I turned it into 30 on accident, and so I've just decided to throw it all out. So here I am, re-recording it, and I didn't dress up because it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and it's too hot to do anything other than just get through the day. So here we are. All right, this scene. When I first watched it, I did not understand what was happening. I mean, on the surface, I understood what was going on. But this scene is 100% subtext. And it's subtext that you can only get to through logically breaking down what is being said, what that reveals about the character saying it, and what it means to the character hearing it, and then what these characters believe their situations to be. It's just, I think, too much that has to be done on the part of the audience viewing this. I think we need a lot more of that subtext to be put directly on screen so that the audience catches on. And the moment I think that needs to be made the clearest, I went over every little tiny itty bitty moment when I did my review on this, but I think the one moment that really needs to be focused on is the meaning of there's only so far you can go into the forest before you start to come out of the forest. I could not figure out what the hell that meant until I realized she's talking about their friendship. Because Ty Lee's comment is what made her think that moment. When Ty Lee goes, oh yeah, I'm so rescued. That moment where Ty Lee says, oh yeah, I'm so rescued, is when Azula goes, holy crap, I have been cultivating a friendship with these two girls, and that's not enough for them to be 100% fully devoted to me. And she turns around and she tests May and she goes, I know you have a crush on Zuko, so tell me, how deep do your feelings run? And May is like, now I only know this because I've seen all 3 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I know what is going to happen to, I mean, not the live action, the animation. I know that May hides her emotion with logic and with coldness because her emotions get her into trouble. So in this moment, May realizes Azula is testing something about her, and she goes into logic mode to protect herself and goes, I would save Zuko, of course. I've known you long enough to know that you don't need saving. And Azula calls her out on that, goes, interesting. That sounds like logic, not feelings. Because she asked May about her feelings for Zuko, and she shut off any reference to feelings. I have no feelings. So Azula, is recognizing that May is hiding the truth about herself. Then she tells them to kill each other, or she's going to kill both of them. Like, one of you has to kill the other, or I'm killing both of you. And the girls can't believe what's happening. And then suddenly they're like, okay. And they go for it. This moment is Azula. So Azula already picked it up on Ty Lee because of that sarcasm in her comment. Oh, I'm so rescued. And then when she tested May, that revealed, okay, I don't have May either. So she's ending the friendship here and turning it into coercion. She is basically saying, we're not friends. If you don't do exactly what I want to do, I'm going to kill both of you. She's also, I think, revealing to the two of them that there's nothing that will motivate them more than their fear of being killed by Azula. Azula will kill them if they don't do exactly what she wants. So we're supposed to see, eventually, May outgrow her fear of Azula. She's going to fear Azula right now, I think, to the point that she will literally do anything to not get killed by Azula. But I think she's going to develop love that will surpass her fear, which is what happens in the animation. Except I think it's implied in the animation that she's already had it, but here we're going to see it happen. We're going to see that development somewhere in season 3. I have a feeling it's going to be that May likes Zuko and wants to be with Zuko, and he's like leaving behind the Fire Nation to go and do greater good things, and she admires everything that he has sacrificed, and suddenly she realizes there are things that are greater than the fear of death. Like, if, I would rather die than be dishonorable, or I would rather die than kill Ty Lee or kill Zuko. Stuff like that. All we have to do is see May feel that her love now outweighs her fear of Azula. But see, I only knew all of this about this scene because I'm aware of what happens in season 3 and I'm aware of the things that didn't happen in the live action to recruit these girls. So I'm trying to be concise. There's so much to talk about in just this one scene alone, but I really do think that we need to see moments on screen in this scene that reveal that subtext, specifically the moment where Azula hears Ty Lee say her line. And I think we need to see a shift from, I don't care about what we're talking about, I'm off in my own world, I'm thinking, I'm scheming, I'm trying to do stuff. But then she hears Ty Lee's comment and we could see like a shift. Something is different. And I want to see her side eye to her, I don't remember which side, I can't remember, never figure out what my camera shows, but Ty Lee is over her right shoulder. I want to see her eyes go that way. And like, it was because of what Ty Lee just said that I'm stopping and something has shifted, something's different. And she's maybe thinking, and then suddenly an idea comes to her and she goes, there's only so far you can go into the forest before you start to come out of it. Because see, what happened is we saw mostly Ty Lee's face during her talking and saying that line. And then we jump to Azula and her facial expression almost doesn't change at all while she's hearing this. We just see her pause and then her eyes kind of shift and she makes that comment. There's only so far into the forest you can go before you come out of the forest, whatever. And that's not enough, I think, to indicate it's what Ty Lee just said and did with how she said it that made me stop and say that comment about the forest. I wasn't sitting here observing the forest and then suddenly I just made this comment. Ty Lee said something and my whole train of thought just stopped and I went, I gotta deal with this. And that's when she turns around and she looks at May and goes, tell me about how deep your feelings for Zuko run. And she hears that she's put logic in front of her feelings. And then she goes, all right, we're redefining the friendship. You two kill each other, or one of you kill the other, or I'm going to kill you both. And that's her gaining control over the girls, 100% control. Anyway, I could go on forever about this scene. And maybe I'll put out a video about just this scene because there's so much in it. There's also even a moment where Ty Lee doesn't understand what's going on. She's like, we don't have to fight each other. We don't have to do this. And May goes, you know that we do. I wanted to see Ty Lee look over to Azula and the camera push on Ty Lee. Like the truth is dawning on her. Oh my gosh, she really is going to kill us. And then she goes, all right, fine. And then she goes after May. Because to me, the camera pushing it in like this on a character's face is the truth settling in on them. Like, I mean, it can mean different things, but in this case, this seemed like it should have been a Ty Lee moment because it was her making the shift. This is about Ty Lee. So something should be happening in Ty Lee's mind and the camera getting closer to Ty Lee would have indicated that. And I wanted to see it on her face as she looks over at Azula and realizes, oh my gosh, she really is gonna kill us. Anyway, there's a million other things I could say about this scene. I fully agree with the choice to not show the recruitment of May and Ty Lee that we had in the animation. That would have been incredibly expensive to build the circus set and show all of that. Azula, May, and Ty Lee are all second-tier characters. Azula very high, and May and Ty Lee very low. They're just not in that top tier, which includes Team Avatar and Zuko. Even Iroh is arguably a high second-tier character. He's kind of on par with Azula. But May and Ty Lee's entire purpose in this story is to serve Azula's arc. So we can be extremely flexible with what we do with them. And we definitely shouldn't be prioritizing huge amounts of budget towards showing what their lives were before they joined Azula. Just give us the gist of how it happened. I think a lot of people watched the scene and were like, wait a minute, weren't Ty Lee and May like fully on board with Azula and everything that she did in, chasing down the Avatar and all this stuff? I think a lot of people forget how Azula got Ty Lee. Ty Lee did not want to be here, but she was pressured to go along with it. If you were to cut out all of the adventures where it seems like May and Ty Lee are nothing but Azula's cheerleaders and just have the recruitment and that big moment in the Boiling Rock, it would look like a very different story. It would look like these girls were under threat of death to follow Azula, and then they finally decided, no, not anymore. So this is a faithful adaptation of what happened between them, but I don't think that the way it was presented was conveying the subtext, which is the most important part of this scene. And I don't know, maybe I'm rusty, but I'm pretty sure that it'll take most people multiple views to catch on to exactly what's going on in this scene. And I don't think it's just me. So I like storytelling that is reconsumable. That is where you consume a scene once on your first time, and then you finish the entire story. And then when you go back and you reconsume it again, that same scene means something very different. So I think we're gonna get the context for the subtext in later seasons, but I think we should have had more of that subtext on the forefront. So not be subtext. I think it should have been more obvious so that people on the first viewing understand what that tree metaphor, that forest metaphor is. Because if you're just listening to the dialogue, Azula's throwing into the whole, well, I want you guys to kill each other now, does feel like it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like it's coming from, holy crap, I have a friendship with these girls, which means that they're not dedicated to me to the extent that I need them to be. So I need to redefine what our relationship is. We are not friends anymore. You are following me under pain of death, because that will secure them for sure. Like, that's the way to do it.
I knew I could trust you both, but I needed to know you could go all the way for me. Why would you need that? Because I have a plan to find Zuko. A way to bring Zuko to us, in fact. We're going after the Avatar.
If the subtext isn't made a little bit more obvious, that even just the fact that there is a lot of subtext in this, I think most people are going to take the dialogue for granted and assume that this actually was Azula testing their friendship. That's not what this is at all. It's what it looks like, but that's not it. It is a redefining. So even though I like what this scene did, I think that subtext just has to be more on the forefront. Anyway, end of insert. Time to move on to Zuko. And Iroh, of course. Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way to support the channel. Or if you're feeling really generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button. You can even leave me a one-time tip. Information is in the description and below. First, we see that time has obviously passed, a lot of it, because Zuko's got longer hair. And they're picking melon yams in a lovely cloudy field while it's raining. I love the romanticism of clouds in the hills that you see all over Chinese poetry and art. Anyway, I love it. So good job on this location. So they're picking melon yams, and Iroh is definitely in his element, enjoying the simple life and the manual labor. And this is exactly how Iroh was depicted in the animation. He was always able to find pleasure and delightful things no matter what situation they were in, even when they were literally sitting on the floor in a town begging for money. And Zuko looks very unsatisfied with where he is, just as he did in the animation. He's clearly unhappy, and in this scene, he urges Iroh to move faster, but Iroh says if he rushes, he'll miss the waft of rind on the breeze, the silky mud settling into the grooves of his skin. And Zuko says that every time Iroh helps someone else, his own bag gets emptier. And Iroh says that's a terrible way to look at the world. Now, in the moment right before this, we saw that Iroh helped an older lady unsnag her bag and just said, "Isn't the rain glorious?" You know, whatever. So we didn't see that Iroh helped this lady, giving her anything, taking anything out of his bag to give to her. And I don't know if this was intentional, but it does look like what we're saying here is that Zuko saw no progress as loss, which is something that his father would have instilled in him. We saw that in the previous season. Because what Zuko says is every time you stop to help somebody, your bag gets emptier. Well, it doesn't get emptier, it just doesn't keep filling up. So I don't know if that was intentional. If it wasn't, then he should have handed some of his melon yams to the lady, but it's better this way because it shows just how pessimistic Zuko is, that if he's not gaining, if he's just being stagnant, then he sees that as loss, which again, he sees no progress as loss. And Iroh's line to him about that being a horrible way to look at the world is the knowledge or the wisdom that Zuko is going to need and acquire this season. And we'll see him really struggling for it. He's going to believe that's not the way it is, and he's going to go down a dark path and then come out of it thinking maybe that was the wisdom that I needed. And so I like the little arc that we give to Zuko in this season, and it was in the animation exactly the same. It does feel, I think, for a lot of people like we're skipping a bunch of stuff that happened, but really what happened in the animation was Zuko and Iroh are confronted by Azula, well, not confronted, they're approached by Azula, who says, time to come home, family's very important now, and Iroh doesn't buy it, and then it is revealed that Iroh is viewed as a traitor and Zuko a failure because he didn't get the Avatar, and Iroh turned on General Zhao, or Admiral Zhao. So they're fugitives of the Fire Nation. And then we see them begging and Zuko being dissatisfied while Iroh is just getting through life rather pleasantly. We see that. Now, there was one episode where we had Iroh basically tries to make tea out of a poison flower, and then they get medical care from this family that gives them dinner as well. And then Zuko steals their ostrich horse as they're leaving. That still happens, but we've added it to the Zuko alone arc. And I think it works very well. So I think this was a good choice to basically take that moment and say, we're not going to have Iroh witnessing Zuko doing this and just being okay with them doing it, with him doing it. We're going to see that Zuko does that on his own when Iroh's not there to make sure he always does the right thing. It did actually always kind of bother me that in the animation, Iroh just kind of went along with that. Even though Iroh would let Zuko do stuff that he knew was just going to cost him, like, this is going to slap you in the face later, and he would just kind of let Zuko do that. It was always hard for me to accept that he would let Zuko hurt somebody who doesn't deserve it on his watch, basically. So I think this is better. Hurt an innocent person is what I mean, especially somebody who just helped you. Anyway, so Zuko goes on a rant about the world is terrible, this place is terrible, melon yams are terrible. And he says that they started out picking melon yams, and then they moved on to a different crop, and then a different crop, and now they're back to melon yams. And although this line kind of bothered me at first because I thought, oh, you're just telling us what they've been doing all this time off screen, but it's actually doing more than that. This line is also telling us that Zuko sees no end to this. He sees no progress. This is like a continuation of the no progress is a loss. So this actually does work for me. It's still a hard line to hear when we haven't seen all of this all happening, and then it feels like, well, now they're just telling us what they've been doing for the past several months or years. It seems like it's been years at this point. Zuko asks, how long can they keep doing this, hiding out like fugitives? And I thought that was good. You're telling us that he isn't looking at this as something that his life is now, like, permanently. He feels like this is something that he's just putting up with, like, temporarily, and clearly thinks that he shouldn't have to. And Iroh responds, frankly, we are fugitives. And Zuko walks off after a look that is basically he can't believe that this is what his life is going to have to be. And I like this. All of this was good. We literally just established their mentalities that are going to be butting heads all the way to the end of this episode, but then really all the way through this season. In the next scene, I have zero complaints whatsoever. So Zuko is in line with the other pickers, turning in his tools and collecting his pay. He starts complaining that he only got paid 2 coins. The day before, it was 3, and the day before that, it was 4. So he's getting paid less and less every day. And the guy tells him that it's for the broken tool and for rent. And Zuko's like,
That spade was broken when I picked it up this morning. And as for rent, I don't sleep inside. I sleep under the stars like an animal.
I really like the juxtaposition of this phrase, because when you say sleeping under the stars, it is this romantic image. It's something that we always see as being like, oh, isn't that lovely and wonderful? But then the phrase like an animal is usually something that is used to insinuate filth and lowliness, like, you know, sleeping on the dirt like an animal. So for him to say sleeping under the stars like an animal, this is just a writer in me going like, oh, how lovely, you did a good job there. I like that. That was nice. That was a nice line. And it does illustrate how he's thinking, again, that he has a horrible way of looking at the world, sleeping under the stars like an animal. He's taking something that should be nice and turning it into the worst thing. Nice use of language. And I like the way that this conversation ends. So after they've stepped away from everybody else who's in line, Zuko asks Iroh what kind of a prince sweats all days for pennies. And Iroh tries to turn this into a moment of learning for Zuko, answering, a wise prince, a prince who understands the value of hard work, who respects the struggle of his people because he has shared in those struggles. Like, I like that, you know, this is what Iroh would do. He would regularly try to turn everything into a learning experience. But of course, this is just not resonating with Zuko at all. He says, they are beneath me. This whole place is beneath me. Like, here, Iroh is trying to say you will become a better leader because you're connecting with the people. You would be a better ruler of them if you understood their struggle because you have struggled with them. And Zuko's only thought is, they're lower than me. I'm a better person than all of them. I'm more important than they are. Again, it's another lesson that he's learning. Iroh is informing him that this is the wisdom you need to take from this situation, and it's not resonating with Zuko because of his preconceived notion that he is a better person than everybody else around him. He is not equal to them, he is above them. This will be especially important to remember for the next episode, seeing just how far his mentality will drag him down. In the next scene, Zuko is in the middle of picking fruit when some rando guy comes over and just starts helping himself to his line, and Zuko confronts him and is like, hey, this is my line. And the guy tells him, well, go pick from another one in the east field. And Zuko's like, yeah, I'd lose a half an hour in walking. And the guy tells him to walk faster. And this is when Zuko tells him that there's an order to how we do things around here. This is, again, something that he brought up in season 1, that he is adhering to the system, the system that we use. It is established, there's a reason for it, and that's how it should be. And here, this guy has zero respect for any idea of order or who has a right to do what in Zuko's mind. The guy has zero respect for this and shoves Zuko, asking who does he think he is. They're just facing off when a supervisor shows up to separate them, and I love how the supervisor says it, saying, we get it, you're both very scary guys. And then Zuko marches off, and the bully gets to stay on Zuko's line, just like he has lost this fight. He's not in a position of power. And I like that the supervisor tells Iroh, calling him Mushi, which is the line that Zuko named Iroh Mushi in the animation. And Iroh did not like it. But he tells Iroh to get his son in line. So everybody's assuming that Zuko is Iroh's son. And we can tell that the way that Iroh sees Zuko leaving and the situation that just unfolded, that he can tell Zuko's not going to react well to this. I said we can see that Iroh recognizes that putting up with this injustice is not acceptable and certainly something to be concerned with in how it will affect Zuko, who's already voiced that he's at the end of his tolerance. A prince who is above all these peasants would not put up with being the victim of petty injustices. In the last scene with Zuko and Iroh, which I really loved, and I just have to point out that we get a lot of really long shots in this, where the camera is just rolling and the actors are going through their lines. Like it doesn't cut, it just plays out. It felt very immersive. I was totally sucked into this scene. So we start out with Zuko sitting by a fire, and he is holding his ponytail that he would have cut off at this point. In the animation, they cut their top knot and the ponytail after Azula has revealed that the Fire Nation views both of them as a traitor and a failure, like they've been cut off from the Fire Nation. So in Chinese historical tradition, your hair is something that is a gift to you from your parents. It's like a symbol of your connection to your family. So you would cut it off if you were deliberately separating yourself from your family, or if you are recognizing that you have been cut off from your family. To cut your hair is a violation of filial piety or honoring your family. Your hair was a gift from your parents. So in the animation, in season 1, Zuko is banished. So most of his head is shaved, except he has a ponytail because he has not been completely severed from his family. He's just been cast out of the country. But when it's revealed that they have been officially cut out from the family, then they both cut their hair and let their hair go down the river in sort of a recognition of that is what has happened. I've always really liked that they paid attention to that in the animation. And here, I like that he's holding on to it and he's hiding it from Iroh. He's definitely not accepted that he really has been cut off from his family. He's still holding on to it like, I'm still there. I've still got to be able to get back to the Fire Nation, essentially. So Iroh brings Zuko some food, which Zuko rejects. And then Iroh compassionately explains to him, we were forced to do this because we're in hiding, fugitives from our own country. I know the work is hard, but there is a simple joy to be had in the sweat, the creaking of bones, the slow progress towards something that matters, living the austere life. I have accepted our circumstances and saved most of my earnings to open a small tea shop or tea stall in a small town. He says, I could teach you to brew the tea and you might even learn to enjoy the craft. The right cup of tea at the right moment can change your entire life. It's how I got Zarina to fall in love with me. I don't think her name was ever even mentioned in the animation. Like, even the fact that he had a wife was even mentioned. He says, "It's how I got Zarina to fall in love with me. Maybe your life can change out here in a quiet part of the world, away from the troubles of the past. We've been given a gift, Zuko, a rare and precious one. The chance to start over. Don't squander it." This is all good. This is all excellent. Zuko looks at Iroh, and Iroh offers the food to Zuko again. And then Zuko takes the food, but does not eat it. This is all good blocking, by the way. Instead, he turns to Iroh and tells him very dryly, "I'm not your son." Like, nothing that Iroh just said is working on Zuko. And it's because he's still got that ponytail. He still thinks he's got a chance to get back in with the Fire Nation. He still feels like he is above everyone around him. That has not changed. And I do like where they go with how he starts to recognize that he is basically an equal with all of these people. So yeah, he said, "I'm not your son." And Iroh, as if pained, replies, "I know that." And this is interesting. They did not do this in the animation. None of this is in the animation here, but, well, kind of. He does kind of give there's nothing more for us to learn from each other, and then he leaves. Zuko does. But they're giving Iroh an arc, and it's starting right here, because Zuko tells Iroh, "I'm not your son." And Iroh replies as if pained, "I know that." But it seems like he has not been acting that way up until now, because he has been treating him like his son. And even though it's not an arc where Zuko or Iroh has to go, "Oh, well, I've accepted that you're not my son," it's more like accepting that Zuko is going to turn into whatever kind of man he wants to turn into, and trying to push him in a certain direction is not the best option either. Like, he's trying to push him into accepting this life, and he can't accept it. And so he leaves. So in the animation, Iroh does play the teacher role, except for that one time where he was just like okay with Zuko stealing the ostrich horse from the family. There's a couple of moments in the animation that I feel like have triggered this. The first one being that there's Iroh basically scolding Zuko for stealing to make their lives more comfortable. Iroh definitely was like a moral driver. Like, he wanted to be the teacher for Zuko, and he wanted him to always make the right choice. But him doing this is what drives Zuko away. Zuko wants to live like a king because he sees himself as royalty. And Iroh is telling him, "Don't go off and commit crimes like this," even though we did see him steal an ostrich horse. So what we've got going on here is Iroh wants not just for Zuko to live a more moral life, because he's not being shown to do anything immoral here, but he wants him to accept this life, accept that they are going to be beggars and that that's okay. And in the animation, Zuko never really ever accepts that, because he ends up going back to the Fire Nation and then ends up joining the Avatar and then becomes the next Fire Lord. But what happens is Zuko gains an appreciation for what Iroh did, showing him that people are not less valuable than you just because you are their ruler. And so you can't look down on these people. It will always bring you into a position of corruption. I remember when Zuko came out of his metamorphosis and suddenly started acting like a completely different person. And in the end, he couldn't do it. He couldn't maintain that. It was not him. It was false. It was a lie. And so he drops it the moment there is a first temptation. So accepting that life as the one that he was going to live forever was never really going to happen. And so Iroh and Zuko have to come to this sort of middle ground here. Oh, there's a lot to discuss there's a reason why people love the Zuko and Iroh storyline in the original animation, because it has this, it's a conversation starter about what the dynamic between a parent and a child should be. So I do like that we're starting to dive a little bit more into this and literally addressing the fact that Zuko cannot accept being equal with the peasants, but that maybe this is not the lesson that Zuko is ready to learn yet, that he has to realize that he is in the same position as a lot of these peasants are. Yeah, Zuko puts the food down and goes, "You know what I can't stand? your smiles and the little jokes, the affection you give to these sod-busting peons who despise you if they had any inkling of who you really are. Iroh says, living is a choice. I choose to be happy and try and spread joy. And Zuko stands and folds his arms, looking down at the fire coldly. I like that's like folding your arms like that. That is something that you typically do when you're defending something that you feel. The psychological implications of folding your arms like this is, I'm not letting go of a belief that I have. Like, he's rejecting Iroh talking about choosing to spread joy. And I like that his childish attack after that.
You don't deserve joy. All of this is your fault. Everything that has happened to me.
My fault? I didn't banish you.
You broke! You were meant to be Fire Lord, not my father. If you hadn't failed in the siege and retreated, if you hadn't stood by and done nothing when my father usurped you, if you had stood up to him and fought for what was yours, then I would have never been in that war council, in that Agni Kai, on that ship. None of this would have happened. It's your fault. Because of your weakness, because your moment was there and you didn't fight.
This is really good. This is so good. And we built up to this moment, or prepared for this moment, in season 1. The compassion is a sign of weakness. Literally everything that Iroh was doing, trying to show Zuko that there's value in spreading joy and kindness and, and being one with these people, Zuko was seeing all of that as cowardice and like surrendering to the people, surrendering to the circumstances. Like, that's weakness. And like throwing the kindness to other people, that's like, there's the compassion coming in. It's all having the opposite effect on Zuko. So all of Iroh's efforts to persuade Zuko have done nothing but push him further away. This is great. Yeah, so this conversation didn't happen in the animation exactly, but it definitely went in that direction in many times. So we had moments where he would tell Iroh that, basically he despises him and his perceived weaknesses. He called him lazy and cowardly regularly. And we see that this isn't something we see him express to Iroh until after his banishment. And I'm talking about the animation here. So we get a few scenes of before Zuko is banished, and he seems to have a very good relationship with Iroh. We see that in the War Council. Actually, the first scene, chronologically, is when he learns about, he gets the letter from Uncle Iroh, and he gets a knife from the Earth Kingdom as a gift from Uncle Iroh. And then we also see when he learns about Lu Ten's death, and he feels sad for Uncle Iroh, and why he's probably just sad that his only son has died. Like, that's why he abandoned the siege of Ba Sing Se. So he was seeing what he was doing as he was sad. Of course, that's a reason for him to stop attacking Ba Sing Se. And then there was going into the War Council. He turned to Uncle Iroh for help to get in there. Like, they had a good, positive relationship. And then the first flashback that we get to Iroh and Zuko after Zuko's banishment, it happens a week after his banishment. And he's starting to talk to Iroh like this already. And this is what you do with family. You feel safe lashing out at them. Like, you can't just lash out at anybody. They'll walk away and then like, oh no, I've lost that resource or that connection, whatever it is, it's over. But you can do this with family. It's something you shouldn't do, but it is something that people do with families, lash out at them cruelly and coldly like this, misplacing anger. But the thing that makes this so good is that everything that Zuko is saying is right. So it hurts a lot more, and it is serving Iroh's upcoming arc as well. I said, yeah, I do love that they went as far as to directly correlate Iroh's kindness and little acts of compassion and spreading joy as acts of cowardice in Zuko's mind. And that is tied really well into Ozai literally burning Zuko for those exact same reasons. That compassion is a sign of weakness. So every time Iroh was showing kindness, even to Zuko, Zuko wasn't seeing kindness. He was seeing the weakness and the cowardice and the surrender that got him burned, banished, and rejected by his father. I said, I love it. It is all true, but it's all truths that Zuko is not judging correctly because he's not in the right headspace. So this is excellent. Yeah, so Iroh tells Zuko basically what Zuko said before his banishment. Lu Ten died. Like, that's why I didn't fight for those things. How can you not understand that? And this is when Zuko revokes what he said to him in the last episode of the last season before Iroh turned on Admiral Zhao. And when Iroh was helping Zuko set off for the Oasis to try and capture the Avatar, when Zuko was setting off to go and do that, he told Iroh, which he did not say in the animation. So this moment in season 1 is serving this moment here in season 2, where he said, Lu Ten would be proud to have you for a father. And now here, he's saying, and what would he, Lu Ten, think of you if he could see you now? Like, you were helping me to go catch the Avatar before. He would have been proud of you then. But now you've given up on that. He has abandoned the Fire Nation as much as the Fire Nation has abandoned us, even though Zuko's kind of in denial about that. And he's saying, now Lu Ten would not be proud of you. Like, you're not doing the thing that we of the Fire Nation royal family are supposed to do. Zuko then finishes the conversation and walks away with, I'm going to find the Avatar and then I'm going to go home. Goodbye, Uncle. And we just barely see that even Zuko found this, like, I can't believe I just said that, as he's walking away into the night. So this is great. Zuko and Iroh's arc, their whole storyline in the animation, is the easiest to translate into live action because it's a more of a streamlined story. There are fewer side quests that feel like side quests. One moment is always serving the next. And so I like that when we get to this live action, we're going to dive deeper into some of the things that we only got small snippets of in the animation. And to have Zuko see his banishment as Iroh's fault is something that never got not even closely touched on in the animation. We see the anger there, but he never correlated that Iroh was supposed to be the Fire Lord. Instead, Ozai was the Fire Lord because Iroh gave up after Lu Ten died. So of course he should see all of this as Iroh's fault. Like, Iroh is the one who, if he was the Fire Lord, none of this other stuff, bad stuff, would have happened to Zuko. So I really like that they went there. And it's precisely what a child would do to hurt their parent the most if they wanted to. Okay, we're moving on to Team Avatar now. And first of all, Katara narrating the classic intro. I love it. I do wish we did this in the first episode, like of the first season. But it's okay, we get it now. And the effects over real location photography looks spectacular. Like, this is so good. Thank you. Please, this is what we should do. Then we get a little change to the intro where Katara basically fills us in on what they've been doing. Aang has basically mastered waterbending at this point. And we see him doing the water spout thing that we only ever saw him do in the animation in season 1, the second episode, when he goes into the Avatar state and then attacks Zuko's ship to help everybody get away, basically. I honestly didn't think we'd ever see that. I said my one issue is that this does seem to indicate that they did not remain in the Northern Water Tribe to train. This is consistent with how they ended season 1 in the live action. Katara is basically informing Pakku that she'd love to stay and help him train new recruits, but she has to go and help Aang on his journey. And Master Pakku is basically like, oh, basically you're going to teach him, like, that's a good thing. It is highly unusual that Katara is literally looking right at Master Pakku, a waterbending master, and says that it's important for Aang to learn waterbending. Like, he should teach him. I feel like we're missing a scene where it's established that the reason they leave is because it's not safe for them to stay there. If they stay in the Northern Water Tribe, they're inviting more attacks on the Northern Water Tribe. Like, that would be a good reason for them not to have been there. But that wasn't there. And there was a part of me also that wanted to see that somehow they did rejoin up with Master Pakku. Like, maybe he went out to go and meet them. Because, I mean, in the animation, he leaves the Northern Water Tribe to go to the south. So, like, maybe during their time between the seasons in the live action, we could have seen that Master Pakku did come and help reinforce his training. But see, this is me, the fencing instructor. I used to teach fencing as well. And you can get to a certain level of skill without any instruction, but you really do need somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. But, you know, waterbending and firebending and earthbending, this all could maybe just be like, oh, it's not the same as, you know, like a precision thing. Like in epee, which is my weapon, you have an 8mm target to hit and you have 1/25 of a second to hit it. So you kind of need some fine tuning from a pro to tell you how to do that the best way. But this sort of thing does happen in like cultivation stories and martial arts stories where they'll find like a scroll and that'll be enough to teach them a skill. But any real martial artist, I think, will tell you that you definitely need a pro to teach you. In the animation, Aang picked up waterbending very quickly, like no problem whatsoever. And in the live action, they've kind of changed it up and shown that he's not as confident in himself picking up another bending element. See, in the animation, in the Siege of the North Pole Part 2, it starts out with Master Pakku like turning to Aang and, you know, going like, well, I guess you must have mastered waterbending. And he's like, well, I wouldn't say mastered, but check this out. And then he makes himself into a snowman. And the comment is basically that Aang didn't work very hard at waterbending, but he obviously has a good, strong grasp of it. But not perfect, because we do see Katara actually training him in the second season in waterbending techniques. I'm just being a martial arts snob here. Anyway, at the end of the little intro and montage of what he's been doing, we see Aang landing on top of a mountain overlooking Omashu, which has smoke rising from it. So we know that in the end of the previous season, it was captured by the Fire Nation. So we already know what's going on here. The first scene is in the forest and we get a bunch of refugees running from something, and there's a soldier among them. And it is the same soldier who we saw in the first season confronting Iroh. He's collapsed, and then we have this new character, Amida, who comes over to like tell him like, we've got to go. There's Fire Nation that way and there's Kyoshi warriors this way, so we got to go. And he's expressing hopelessness that like, why do we run? Why do we bother running? And she basically just tells him like, well, you know, if we're gonna die, then I'm gonna die fighting, and so are you. And she basically gets him to like start like, okay, yes, you're right, I'll keep fighting too. But just as he's standing up, he sees Fire Nation is attacking her, and he protects her and gets taken out himself, which I really like that little unexpected twist in this early part of the episode, that she was basically convincing him to stay up and fight, and when he does, it kills him. Like, the first thing he does is protect her and get killed. He doesn't die, but he gets hit.
It's called a cruel irony.
There is some stuff about this first exchange in dialogue that I would have changed, and it was because that first line where she says, that way is Fire Nation soldiers coming fast, and that way Kyoshi warriors that are going to take us someplace safe or whatever. That feels a lot like stuff that we could have learned in another way. And you always want to try to avoid that, especially in like an opening line, because it does feel like, oh, why are you telling us this? Why not just show us this? Here's how you make it not telly, by giving us clues that don't directly say what's chasing them and what it is that they're running to. So here's how I would have shown this. First of all, I would have panned the camera down from you're looking at Omashu, and then the camera sinks down into the trees, and then we see the refugees running. So we know that they're running away from Omashu. Dixit, that's the name of this guy, the Earth Kingdom soldier, he's being partially carried by Sai and some other guy. Amida is with them, sort of leading them. The soldier cries out in pain and falls, and just like he does in the live action as it is. And Amida notices, and everybody notices, so they all stop. And we can see that these people look disheveled, like they were just woken up out of sleeping bags and started running. Amida quickly looks at the soldier's wound, and the camera shows the audience the fresh burn, bloody and raw, not too graphic, just obvious that it is a burn that just happened. And Sai asks Amida if giving him haldi root to chew would help, and Amida says it doesn't matter if it would. Her medicine box is probably a pile of ash back at the campsite. Then Amida tries to encourage Dixit, saying, you can make it. It could only be a few more miles to the something something spot, like a place. Like, it could only be a few more miles to the Standing Rock or whatever. Dixit looks defeated and says, there is no point. Just leave me. And Amida is shocked and then says with compassion, after you saved us, no, but you have to get up now. Look, the Kyoshi warriors will surely have some field medicine. The sooner we get to them, the sooner we can get you some anesthetics. That establishes that they're going to that spot, and it's because the Kyoshi warriors are going to be there. And then she can say, maybe they're even coming to meet us. From there, the conversation continues as it does. No one's coming to save us. Like, because she said maybe they're coming to get us, and he's like, they're not. Like, it's not happening. This way, we aren't just saying Fire Nation soldiers that way, Kyoshi soldiers that way, or warriors. There's a moment right after Dixit repeats, no one is coming, where the camera shows the reactions of people watching. Now, I would have made sure that it also pauses on Amida to show her processing everything that he has just said, and then that something in her mind shifts and her approach to Dixit changes. no more compassion. And she doesn't say, then we save ourselves. That's not really a good line for this situation, because she immediately talks about how, like, we're gonna die. She needs to tap into his psychology as a soldier in a hopeless situation. They all know that this is probably hopeless. So instead of saying, then we save ourselves, if they kill me, I will die on my feet fighting, just have her say, if they kill me, I will die on my feet fighting, and so will you. Just that, and then let the rest of it play out exactly as it does. That's the only change I would have made to this, just to kind of hide the telling and then easily transition into playing out the scene, the rest of it, the way that it does. Anyway, so he gets up and sees that there's Fire Nation behind her, which is in the direction of the Kyoshi warriors that they were pointing at. So I was a little bit confused about that. It wasn't until much later, well, not much later, but significantly later in this episode, where Teo is scouting and basically says the entire territory is overrun. So they are running towards the Kyoshi warriors, not aware that they're actually surrounded by Fire Nation. That makes better sense on a second watch. On the first watch, I was like, why are the Fire Nation people over there when they were just running from them and they were coming this way? I was just like, how did that happen? Then we have a great fight scene with the gang. The Fire Nation soldiers show up and then they hear Appa up in the sky. Aang drops down, and we do see that there's like, I love the way that this played out, that he tries to waterbend at the guy and does it wrong, and then Katara has to like fix it, his form, and then he does it right. But I think that they should have been next to a stream instead of just these two random looking puddles of water, because those look very fake. And so far, everything else in this looks so nice. Like, we had a good scene in the episode Omashu in season 1 where Katara and Jet were sitting next to a fire, which was next to a creek. Like, let's put the set there. That would have been better. But yeah, this intro does a good job of telling us the situation. Aang messes up the waterbending form. Katara corrects it, all with a smile. The only thing I would have changed about this bit, because then he's more powerful and confident after that, the only thing I would have changed about this part here is I would have made it look like Aang is more embarrassed that he did it wrong, because we're going to see that his thing in this is confidence. His thing that he's going to overcome in this episode with the Serpent's past and whatnot is his confidence in his ability to be like the Avatar, to be the leader, to be the one who's going to help all of these people. So for him to mess up and not be like immediately like we see that he's super embarrassed about it, but then Katara like fixes him and he's like, okay, and then he's able to do it and it works. It wasn't quite enough that he seems like he's not confident, like he messed up and he's embarrassed about it. So I would have amped that up just a little bit more. But the humor was great. I really enjoyed it. The whole fight was fantastic. And so I got to see this, like I said, at the season 2 premiere on a big screen. And when Katara did the water circle, that was so, like, everybody was like, this is so good. This looks so cool. But I said this in season 1, that I was confident this girl was gonna really nail it with Katara in season 2. And I feel so validated in my confidence that she could do it. After the 7th episode in season 1, when she fought Master Pakku, I was like, oh my gosh, this girl can like really move. Like, I can't wait to see what she's actually going to do as Katara, in my opinion, one of the coolest characters as far as the bending is concerned, like definitely probably the coolest. Her progression was the most interesting to watch as a bender. So I loved that she was moving and she looked so confident. Like, excellent job to this young actress. I said the choreography is great, the blocking is great. There's only so much that you can do in a forest set where it's like flat ground and just a bunch of trees without them having like climbing up in the trees and doing stuff in the trees. And they managed to keep everything very interesting. I mean, it helps that they can make obstacles like the ice wave where Aang slides up on the ice wave that he makes, which I didn't realize until a second viewing that he froze guys inside of the ice. Oh, it was cute. We also got some fun choreography with Sokka fighting. So he really didn't have like a whole lot in season 1, with the exception of his fight at the beginning with Zuko, and he was struggling in that. So we get to see that he's also become a much more competent fighter. I like that. And I really like the long takes. Oh, there's one part in Sokka's fight I wanted to note. There's a technical issue, I believe. They're missing a sound effect. So when he flips over this guy, he's actually kicking the second soldier in the head, but there's no clunk sound of him kicking him. It doesn't look like he's kicked him because that sound cue is missing. But you can tell that he hit his head because his helmet like flinks forward. said this in season 1, but I would really like to see Sokka catch Boomerang. And we usually just see him throwing it. I mean, I know it makes sense that if he hit his target, then he wouldn't be able to catch Boomerang, but he did in the animation. So I just want to see that. But I get it. We needed him to lose Boomerang so that he could use the fan that Suki gave him. Because, yep, then Suki shows up. And again, we didn't need to use dialogue to explain that they haven't seen each other because it's all over Sokka's face. Like, again, I really have to applaud. Like, this being the first scene in the episode was so reassuring because there was so little dialogue, something that there was too much of in season 1. And here they just said, let's let the actors tell the story with their bodies, and they did. And after all the action, we see Suki go in for a kiss with Sokka, but he turns it into a hug, which she was obviously surprised about. And again, the blocking is nice because the camera doesn't move, but we get her reaction, and then it turns to his reaction, and we see that suddenly the embrace becomes more of like it goes from excited and happy to see you to something more somber, like he's like assuring himself that here she is and like, thank God you're still alive kind of a feeling. I really liked that. Again, just telling us what he's thinking and feeling, what both of them are thinking and feeling, rather than saying it out loud. This is excellent. And we know that this is a direct result of what happened in the North. The death of Yue is still haunting him. In the animation, we had tension between Sokka and Yue in the Serpent's Pass, which is when they first came together. Like, it wasn't until they kind of set off to go and do their thing, like do the crossing or escorting the refugees or whatever, that it came out. But it was the only time in the animation, really one of the only times, where Sokka's loss of Yue was addressed as something that affected him and it wasn't played off as comedy or horror. Every single instance in the animation, because I went and I checked all of them, the only time we saw him having a serious conversation other than this was immediately after Yue's death at the end of Siege of the North Part 2 when he's talking to the dad, but he's not expressing sorrow here. He's like listening to the dad expressing sorrow, and he goes, you must be so proud, like, of Yue, and that's it. Then we've got Sokka in the swamp where he sees Yue and she says, you didn't protect me, but that's played off as horror. And then we have Sokka being angry at Toph when Toph suggests that the moon spirit may be turned mean, and then but that's again played off as comedy. And then in the play, the Ember Island Players, again, it's him tearing up at seeing the scene of Yue dying. It's played off as comedy. This was the only moment in the Serpent's Pass when he was wanting to get with Yue, but then he's feeling guilty about everything that happened with not Yue, wanting to get together with Suki, but he can't because it's complicated after what happened in the North. We see him at one point looking up at the moon, like mournfully, and then when Suki comes up to him and asks him, like, are you okay and stuff, and he's talking about how, I'm sorry I was getting overprotective, it's just so hard when you lose somebody. And then he talks about how they're, up in the North, there was somebody that he couldn't protect. That's the only time. So I'm glad that what they're doing is they're treating the death of Yue as something that haunts him, because even though in the animation we saw it coming up, it was never treated like a serious thing. Like, oh, isn't it hilarious that he's sad that the girl that was his first girlfriend, that he had a real, genuine, meaningful connection with, because in the live action, they made it meaningful and genuine, that he was put in charge of protecting and failed to protect, and she ended up dead because of it. This would definitely affect Sokka in a major way, especially when being the protector was like the thing he wanted to be the most. So I'm really glad that they do this with his character in this. The next scene, we've got Katara treating the wound on the back of Captain Dixit, and she asks Aang if he wants to help her heal him, and he shakes his head no in reluctance, and Katara tells him that he will have to learn to heal eventually. Now, because of the way that's worded, you'll have to learn to heal eventually, it sounded like he was resisting learning it, like because he didn't want to, which, I mean, technically that is it, but it didn't come across to me as Aang not being confident that he can do it. There was something missing in the translation, and I don't think that him not wanting to do the waterbending had anything to do with him. It's just a step I don't want to take. It's more like, I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't think I'm good enough. So this is why I wanted to have more of a showing he doesn't have the confidence in that earlier scene when it was played off for comedy, which is good, but maybe make him do the waterbending and it's weak, and he's like, embarrassed, like he came in to make this show and then it didn't go so well, and then Katara shows up and fixes him and he does it big, and then he's like, okay, you know, and then he's into it. I think that would have served this moment better and made it more clear why he doesn't want to heal or doesn't want to learn healing. So I said I would change Katara's line from "you'll have to learn it eventually" to "it's more delicate bending, but you're ready for it. Burns are surface wounds. This is a good one to start on." It's more dialogue. Usually less is more, but in this case, then it would make it clear specifically why, if the performance wasn't selling it, that he just doesn't feel ready for it. And then Aang could look very nervous and say, maybe for the next one. And then Katara can nod or whatever. Yeah, that would establish that it's the fact that healing a wound is delicate work and he's just not confident in his ability at that point. Because, we already saw him doing some pretty spectacular things with waterbending. So why would healing be something that he's afraid of? Well, because it's delicate work. That's different from powerful work. Then we got a cute scene where everybody's kind of greeting each other, and we got Aang and Suki measuring up, because Aang was very short compared to Suki before, and now he's taller than her. I like Katara playing the prank on Sokka, turning his fist into ice. This was nice. It felt way more natural. It was a little awkward where they're all just starting out standing like this, but it lasted so short, and then I never see this really happen again in the whole season, so, you give it a pass. Like, I guess the only other thing we could have done is had one of the characters walk into this and start talking. Like, maybe Sokka is walking up with Sai and then goes right up to Katara and does the thing. Like, that would be one way to make it not seem like they're all just standing there. But, really, that's just me super, super nitpicking. Yeah, I like Suki turning to Sokka and saying, "I can't tell you what it means to see you," and then kind of, like, realizing that she's staring at Sokka, and Sokka realizing he's staring at her, and then shifting to, all of you. Obviously not just Sokka. And then we set the goal for this episode. She asks what they are doing in the Earth Kingdom, and Aang says that he is going to free Bumi and ask if anyone knows where he is being held. And Sai chips in and tells him that it's a metal tower in Omashu, and he can't bend his way out. I feel like the reason why they said he can't bend his way out is because they're trying to say, oh, you can't bend metal, because we haven't really established that in this. It works that Sai says it. It's unfortunate we can't figure out some way to not just say that, but I get it. But Aang's next line didn't quite follow. He says, "I don't care, I need to learn earthbending." So Sai says he's being held in a metal tower in Omashu. He can't bend his way out. And Aang goes, "I don't care, I need to learn earthbending." Like, what do you not care about? So I would have changed Sai's line to say something like it's surrounded by guards or whatever, because then when Aang says, "I don't care," it means I don't care what the obstacle is to get him out, I'm going to get him out. I don't think it's really clear that him being in a metal box and not being able to get himself out makes it like, oh, well, that's going to be hard for you to go and rescue him. But if he's got guards around the tower, then it would be a hard thing for Aang to go and do. Aang's line was, "I don't care, I need to learn earthbending and I'm gonna get my friend." I would have changed it to Sai's last line being, he can't bend himself out of it, and Aang could maybe say, "Then I'm gonna break him out. I need to learn earthbending and I'm not abandoning my friend." And I think that would tie in directly to his last encounter with Bumi, where it was about your friends will not come and help you. And so I'm gonna get my friend doesn't quite mean the same as I'm not going to abandon my friend, even though it sort of implies the same thing. I'm just picky about word choices like that. Anyway, from there we cut to the title card, and I really do like this new style. I'm a stickler for consistency, so I'm like, why did you change this from season 1? But I do also see that the way it was done in season 1 is probably way more expensive than having a static 3D model that you just move the camera around, which it would be done CGI, I'm guessing, but that's still cheaper to do than all this fancy animation that they had before. Yeah, I do like it. And it's more, because they're making it look like, this is in the real world, this title card, like it's a structure that is in the dirt or in the rock or whatever. It does fit that season 2 feels a lot more grounded than season 1. And for more than just aesthetic reasons. We're not in the volume anymore. The writing itself is more mature, or it follows more mature storytelling patterns. Okay, really quickly, before we keep going, I want to talk about this stuff that was skipped, because I've seen a lot of people who are commenting on and actually even my friend at Netflix, after I saw the entire first season, said, "What did you think about all the stuff that we skipped from the beginning of season 2? And I said, "I think you didn't skip anything essential." And you didn't. If you look at those early episodes in the animation, as far as Team Avatar is concerned, the most important thing you got was that Bumi told Aang that I'm not going to be your earthbending teacher. You need somebody who can wait and listen. And that was pretty much it. You have also the fear of going into the Avatar state, which you don't need to have this whole thing with General Fong and with him having nightmares. I mean, you could have him having nightmares that you had in episode 1. You don't need that. You can just establish that he's afraid of going into the Avatar state. It's something that has plagued him ever since the end of season 1. That's not something you have to show. And when you have less time to tell a story, which it's in my discussion on faithful adaptations, animation going to live action needs a lot more time to happen in order for it to feel good. Otherwise, it will feel like breakneck speed. It will feel like childish caricature storytelling, because that's what an animation like Avatar is. This is not Grave of the Fireflies, which is, don't watch it if you don't want to be devastated. It's a very childlike, condensed story. And to play that out in live action in that same way, if you were to go frame for frame, the same, basically a live action replication of the animation, it will feel like a child's cartoon. It won't feel good. You need to let stuff breathe. And you're going to take maybe 2 to 3 times as much time to tell the same story. So you have to cut a lot in order to allow for that breathing room if you don't have a million hours to do this. Well, I would say you probably need close to 15 or 20 hours to tell the story of the animation in a live action. But yeah, so episode 1 of the animation, we've got Aang is afraid of the Avatar state. Episode 2, we have more of Aang has a crush on Katara, and also revealing that Omashu's been taken by the Fire Nation. Well, if we didn't reveal that Aang has a crush on Katara in season 1 of the live action, then here's a good place to introduce it, which they do in this first episode. And then you've got the Bumi stuff. So we saw Omashu get captured at the end of season 1. So here, all we need to do is really the Bumi stuff and the Avatar state fear, and then introduce the crush on Katara. And that's it. That's all you got to do here. And when you're adapting something like this, where there's a lot of little side quests along the way, you have to find what are the key character moments that happen during these side quests. And is there a way to have them still happen in the live action without the journeys of those side quests? Because remember, you don't have as much time to tell this story in a believable way in a live action. So you got to get rid of the plot, but how do we keep that character development? And I think that they did everything that they needed to do here. It's very hard to know a story so thoroughly, the interior and the tiny intricacies of characters and their development like you see in Avatar, and then get to something that is clearly abbreviated, where they have had to just look at the core things. And then they did fill in some stuff that wasn't in the animation, but it's stuff that's kind of necessary for those breathing moments or deeper dives into things that if you don't dive into it deeply, then it feels like you're neglecting it in a live action because it feels more real. Like Sokka mourning Yue and being conflicted about Suki. Like he just gets over that in literally one scene in the animation. So he's just going to get over it like that in the live action. I don't think people would buy that. We'll talk more about it as we go. But anyway, in the next scene, Aang with Momo flies into the palace of Omashu. And I wanted to see a metal tower, but I couldn't see one at all. I might have missed it. I mean, I've looked and I just see the normal tower, and then his room has like a safe door. So he's clearly in a metal room, but it's not a metal tower. So I would have changed Sai's name to call it a metal cell or a vault. But anyway, they should have done that. Aang takes out 3 guards, gets the keys, and then there's a very interesting interaction with Bumi. This interaction starts out very much like how it does in the animation, but it ends differently.
Aang, you shouldn't be here.
Bumi, there you are.
You usually wait a century between visits. This is much too soon. The years are catching up with you. Many things are catching up with you, I imagine. Stars, planets, and the like.
This is a super strong indication that Bumi knows Sozin's Comet is on his way. And if you think about it, he would have known Sozin's Comet came around the first time because he was alive for it. He and Aang, when Aang was a kid, were friends. Well, Aang still is a kid, but when Aang 100 years ago was a kid, Bumi was there. So you would think he would know about Sozin's Comet, and this is what happened to Aang's people. I'm not sure why he didn't mention it. In the animation or the live action, why didn't he mention it? But he does kind of hint at it here. Anyway, Bumi tells Aang that he can't leave with him because he's far too busy, and then we learn that he surrendered Omashu. He didn't actually lose the fight, and this is all just like the animation. Aang is shocked and angry at Bumi, again, just like in the animation, until Bumi explains that he did it because if he fought, his people would have been killed. And now this is something that the animation did not explain. And it definitely didn't elaborate that this was connected to Bumi actually protecting the people, like that he surrendered because he was protecting the people. And I mean, the reason is because in the animation, you don't see that like, oh, his people are gonna die. Like if they fight, they will die. We did not see people really dying on screen. Even Jet dies off screen in the animation. So Bumi surrendering was never directly correlated to I'm stopping my people from being killed. It was more correlated to, well, I want to win. And that's not quite the same thing. So I like that the live action is connecting those two things. I also like that Bumi expresses that surrendering was the hardest thing that he ever had to do. Because in the animation, he just like flat out, I surrender. And I mean, first of all, that can play off as extremely callous. But then if he so easily just does not do anything, doesn't that kind of make him a master of neutral Jing? And he kind of implies that he's not exactly a master of neutral Jing. It's all adding to the weight of the reality of war, which if you're gonna fight in a war, there's going to be death. So I do like this. And then through tears, Bumi says, "Do you see? I had to feel everything so that I could feel nothing, which is the key to feeling everything." I immediately knew that this was going to be explained at some point later in the show. This is like one of those things where when it happens and you've had enough experience with writing to see where somebody is going to recontextualize something later, you see it and you go, I will remember that for later, which I know it will come up later, and it does. As an editor, I just have to make sure that it makes sense in the context of this conversation as it is. I think what it means in the context here, I mean, Bumi obviously means this other thing that's gonna mean something different to Aang later, but in this moment, I think what it means is that he was overwhelmed by the impossible choice in front of him, which brought him to the point of feeling nothing. And then in that stillness, he felt precisely what had to be done, which I can only say is like a real thing. If you've ever experienced overwhelming stress or emotion to the point that you suddenly just go cold, and then suddenly whatever the solution to whatever your problem was sort of becomes clear, like you're able to see everything in its complete, like in its complete state, like you can see the whole picture, and then, oh, I just have to do this thing. Anyway, the comment sounds a bit nutty like Bumi and illustrates one of the methods for possibly acquiring neutral Jing, the state of serenity, not moving forward, but not moving backwards either. Now, as for how Bumi seems more weighted here than he did in the animation. Like in the animation, he didn't feel, there was not much in the negative realm of emotion coming out of Bumi, but here there definitely is. And I do think that this was a good choice. Bumi is a low second tier, high third tier character. He's somebody who can be altered in order to better serve the characters that are more important. And in Bumi's case, his whole purpose is to serve Aang in some way. So I honestly think that Aang would be 100% fully justified in being ticked off at Bumi. In fact, it should be weird that he's not ticked off at Bumi if it seems like Bumi literally doesn't care about his people. He just wants to win. So doing all of this is good. And for him to ever bring up like I'm saving my people, but not express some sort of a sincerity about that, that would just be very weird in live action. It's too real. Live action is too real for people to accept goofy things like that. Even in One Piece, which is one of the most ridiculous stories and characters and everything, it's all very silly and goofy. They've given real weight to the things that need real weight. And this is why it feels so good when you watch that show. I really do love One Piece. So Bumi explains neutral Jing. One thing that I like the live action did here also is when Bumi said that he must wait and listen for the right moment to strike, Aang implores him saying, "This is the moment. You come with me and we can defeat the Fire Lord together." And I like that you can see Bumi kind of like considering like, wait, what if this is the moment? Like he's wondering if maybe this is it. But then when Aang calls on him as his oldest friend to please just be his teacher, that is when Bumi tells him that his teacher will be a master of neutral Jing. So it could maybe have been a little more clear, but when I look at this and I try to analyze, I really look at every single line. When he's doubting, and then it's because of the line where Aang says, be my teacher, and then Bumi talks about your teacher will be a master of neutral Jing. The fact that he wasn't sure if this was the moment was Bumi understanding, oh, I'm not your teacher. Because if I was, I wouldn't be sitting here going, wait, maybe this is my moment. So it's Aang literally tells him the thing that confirms to him that you're not the one who's going to teach me by simply asking him, by simply stating that maybe this is the moment and I want you to be my teacher. Like it was good. Nice job with the dialogue there. And yeah, he says, your teacher will be a master of neutral Jing, a teacher who waits and listens. Maybe it will be a new friend. Then he tells Aang to hustle out before the guards come, and I do like that there is some tenderness when he tells Aang goodbye and he will see him again, because Aang looks so lost and disappointed. Like, Aang shifts his tone in the animation so quickly, because he's disappointed when he realizes that Bumi's not gonna leave and be his teacher, and then Momo lands on his shoulder, and all of a sudden Aang goes from like sad to like, oh, hey, Momo. Like that won't fly in a live action. It happened in season 1, and I brought it up when we got to that part in my critique of the live action. When Aang basically realizes it's been 100 years, and this is in the animation, and everybody I know is dead, he's like, oh my gosh. And it takes like only a few seconds for him to go, well, at least I got to meet you. Like that just will not fly in live action. Animation like this is a caricature of reality. So you have to look at what it means in a real situation. What is this a caricature of? And then do the real thing. In the next scene, it is night, and after we briefly see Teo flying over a shoreline with numerous campfires, we see Katara at a campfire about to have supper with refugees when she notices Amida alone by a lantern. And I really enjoy this conversation. Like, this is a new thing. They totally invented this for the live action, and I thought this was great. Because in the animation, we got Katara starting to do helpful stuff in secret for this Fire Nation town, and then she hears about the legend of the Painted Lady, and then she starts dressing up like the Painted Lady. Here, we're slowly showing how she gets this idea of the Painted Lady, who's this mystical figure that she can, this is somebody of legend who does helpful things, who guides people, and for her to correlate that with her wanting to help people and then going, I need to hide who I am in Ba Sing Se so I can just don a disguise, and the first thing she thinks of is the Painted Lady. It's nice that they lead all of that here and all the stuff that they do with the Painted Lady. I'm just gonna read my notes. But oh yeah, so first I'm talking about the conversation here. To deliver this information to Katara in a way that feels organic and intimate and hopeful, this character and this conversation all being invented for that purpose was good. At first I was like, why are we introducing a new character here? We've got plenty of other new characters to deal with, but I don't think you could have replaced this character with like Teo or Sai. Like, I can't think of a single character to do this thing, and the thing that they're gonna do with Katara with the Painted Lady and these flowers and whatnot is a very good idea, and this just felt totally natural like this. Yeah, I said this scene could have been awkward and weird, but it felt very real. Like, here's Amida, after having escaped Omashu and being saved by the Messiah of the world, and she's having like this spiritual moment fueled by nostalgia and renewed hope and faith, and then she's sharing that moment with Katara and introducing the Painted Lady. So this whole little thing here is a really nice way to lead Katara into the Painted Lady. The flower, called the Painted Lady, supposedly grows wherever the Painted Lady touched the earth. She is a river spirit, just like in the animation, who appears in the rolling mists, taking the form of a woman painted in red and gold. And Amida remembered in her youth that these flowers grew like a perfumed blanket around her village until one day they all withered. Her mother knew that this was a sign and immediately packed the family up and they left, and a week later the Fire Nation burned their village down to the ground. She said that the Painted Lady warned them, and paying attention saved their family. And Amida remarks that this is the first Painted Lady that she's seen since then, and tells Katara that when you see a Painted Lady, the flower, it's a blessing, a sign. It means that you are going the right way. whichever way that is. And Katara assures Amida that they are going somewhere safe, and after Amida leaves, Katara is left there looking at the flower curiously. Again, like, no complaints. This just felt so good. This is a nice little mythology that they've created with these flowers and introducing the idea of the painted lady. This flower also is a tangible symbol, a symbol of hope, which is very Katara, and a sign of you're going the right way, you're thinking the right way, you're doing the right thing. Also, the music for the painted lady was very nice. I like the music a lot in this second season and the use of the music. Over with Sokka, we see him being watchful near a campfire when he is jump scared by Suki, just like in season 1. I like that they're doing this pattern with Suki, that she's sneaky, just like a martial artist would be capable of being quiet if she wanted to be. They exchange awkward how are yous. Well, Sokka's awkward. Suki is mocking in a playful way, his awkwardness. She offers him a peach pear, which he clumsily tries to refuse, and Suki teases him until he gives in, and then very casually suggests that since they are going to be traveling together, why not just be together? And Sokka super awkwardly does not answer, just hears Aang arriving and then leaves without responding or saying anything, and Suki's left there being a little bit confused, but then she sort of smiles to herself. This is really cute. I really liked this. Suki is right where they left off, but obviously Sokka is the one who's acting differently here. He is pushing back on her attempts to get closer. And this is exactly how it went down in the animation, that they both kind of go in for a kiss, but he's the one who pushes her away. Like, the whole thing, it was kind of going there. But yeah, they gave a lot more work to Sokka's and Yue's relationship in season 1 than they did in the animation. So him feeling conflicted about getting together with Suki is actually more earned in this second season in the live action as a result of the live action than it was in the second season of the animation, considering the relationship between Sokka and Yue in the animation. In the animation, their relationship was not really very well developed. So the fact that they gave more weight to it in season 1 is serving this a lot better. And I also like that we're not letting Sokka get together with Suki in this second season. In the animation, he rejects her at night, and the next morning he kisses her. Like, he got over it that quickly. So here, they're gonna let this be something that is between them for a lot longer, and I think that that's a good idea. My last note here is that they did a good job with Suki's small comment that Sokka's regular threats to eat Momo was a great idea because Momo looks delicious. So that comment alone actually does a lot of work in showing that she is basically the perfect partner for Sokka in personality. Their little attraction to each other in season 1 was not as strong as Sokka's attraction to Yue. And so now that Yue is gone, what we need to do is establish that Suki is also more than just infatuation. There's potential for a substantial relationship between the two of them. I said when they met the last time in the live action, it was very sweet, awkward flirtation from both of them, but nothing really substantial outside of both of them recognizing in each other something that they both admire, the warrior's heart. But see, Suki was also interested in, Sokka was interested in her a lot because he saw her as a very competent warrior. And Suki was looking at him in the same way, but he couldn't see it in himself. But also there was this interest in what is the outside world. And here was this, strapping young warrior guy who comes in and she finds him attractive, obviously. So now we're giving it more substance here. And I said this little comment about eating Momo is showing that she not only does Suki have a sharp mind, but she appreciates Sokka's humor and maybe his sensibilities as well. So by showing that he could have a truly substantial relationship with Suki, but he is constantly pushing her away because of his trauma over Yue, we are starting to build up Sokka's rescuing Suki in season 3, I think. Sokka never gets to reconcile with Suki in season 2 in the live action. So his experience with Yue is going to propel that in this second season. I don't think it was very obvious in the animation that ever would be because they get together. They get together in season 2. And then after she gets captured, he goes to rescue her. But here, this is going to be like, thanks to Yue's loss while he was supposed to be her protector. And then here you've got him not reconciling with Suki and getting together with Suki, and then her getting imprisoned. It's now that moment with Yue is going to feed into his like need to be the one who rescues her very nicely. This is excellent. So well done. They did a very good job with Sokka in this live action. Okay, then Aang comes back from trying to rescue Bumi. He's frustrated that he doesn't seem to care about his people or about himself and his needs. And in the animation, Aang did confront Bumi with exactly this attitude, and he's super disappointed that he has to find someone else to teach him. But he gets over it in about 7 seconds. I just noted here that I did go and count how long it takes him to get over it. And all it took was, yeah, Momo landing on his shoulder and him going like, okay, whatever, Momo's funny. Genuine anger and disappointment does not go away in the blink of an eye. This is why in an adaptation from an animation like Avatar to live action, we have to give these mindsets time to shift. This is one of those reasons why a live action would take a lot longer to tell the same story. We can't have Aang just get over stuff quickly. We need to stretch that time out. So then if you're stretching that time out, what are you filling it with? Because you can't just have him standing there getting over it. Other things are going to have to happen. But we need them to be useful things. Anyway, Katara is telling him to slow down, and just as she's getting him into that calmed down state, Sokka runs up and says, Sai has something important to tell everyone when they all have a sec, and then suddenly Teo rolls up saying we need to get back on the road right now because the Fire Nation has overrun the entire southern shore and the entire territory is covered. And then Aang concludes that there's only one path for them to go. Like if everything else is overrun, there's only one other way we can go. And I'm okay with Aang knowing which way to go because number one, he's a flyer. He's the one that everybody's kind of looking to as the leader, but we are slowly seeing that Sokka is the idea guy, but Aang, being the one who has to learn earthbending, is going to be the one calling a lot of the shots. Part of me does wish that Sokka was the one who says, well, we should go this way, but we're putting more pressure on Aang being the leader, the one who is going to save everybody. So to have him speak up here does serve his arc in this particular moment here, in this episode here. We cut to the gang and the refugees at the entrance to the Serpent's Pass, and I've heard a lot of people freaking out that this is not how or why they take the Serpent's Pass. And this is one of those plot moments where the Serpent's Pass events, if you delete those from the animation, you don't really change anything. In the previous episode, Aang was really upset looking for Appa after Appa had been stolen out in the desert. But we start out the Serpent's Pass episode with Aang in relatively good spirits. He's splish-splashing in the water, making jokes, having fun, smiling. Everything seems normal. But whenever somebody brings up Appa, he gets kind of cold. Then they meet this couple that's about to have a baby. Their money and passports were stolen, so Aang says, all right, we're gonna escort you guys over the Serpent's Pass. They see the sign at the very beginning of the pass that says abandon hope, and the couple remarks that how can we abandon hope when that's literally all we have? And Aang speculates that hope is a distraction, that you need to focus on the present. He seems to be executing everything coldly. All he wants to do is get to Ba Sing Se so that they can tell the Earth King about the eclipse. It's basically like he's given up on looking for Appa at this moment. But then they go through the Serpent's Pass. They fight the Fire Nation ships, they're attacked by the big serpent, and then when they finally get to the other side, the lady has her baby, and it's a big moment of panic for everybody, but then when the baby is born, the baby is this sweet, smiling bundle of joy, and it brings Aang to tears, and he says, you know what, I was going through a really hard time lately, but you guys have helped me to remember hope and how important it is, and then he tells Katara that this has all made him realize how important all of his friends are to him, and how important Appa is to him, and then he flies off alone ahead of the gang to reach Ba Sing Se first so he can start looking for Appa. But he gets there and the drill is approaching the wall, so he abandons that plan. So he starts out the crossing of the pass thinking, you know what, I'm not going to think about looking for Appa, but then he gets to the end of the pass going, okay, I am going to look for Appa, and then he flies to the wall of Ba Sing Se and says, okay, looking for Appa is on hold again. The lesson about hope that he learns is actually through his observations of the couple having only hope to keep them going and it paying off in the end. It wasn't something that he personally experienced, it's something that he witnessed others experiencing, which is a lot weaker than if he himself were to have hope and then feel that pay off at the end. It's not bad, it's just weaker. I'm just saying that it works great for the animation and the style of storytelling that the animation is, but in this new story where it has to be more streamlined, where one event has to lead into the next, repurposing the Serpent's Pass totally works, you can use that Serpent's Pass moment to give a different transformation. A different transformation than it puts this couple through a lot of crap and stuff, and their hope paid off despite all of the danger that they had to get through. That's Aang observing something and growing from what he observed. Now, what they do with it in the live action is it's him gaining confidence. And we'll just walk right through all of it, and I'll explain how it goes. But I like that they did this because this actually is serving Aang's moment of growth, which is a different moment of growth in the live action, better, I think, than how it was serving him in the animation. Like, to observe somebody else's transformation and be like, I'm going to learn from that, is not as personal as I'm having confidence issues, and then I go and defeat this giant serpent, and now I feel more confident because holy crap, I took down this giant serpent. That's a little more like, it fulfills his needs in gaining what it is that he didn't have at the start of this Serpent's Pass moment much better. So I have to applaud them for repurposing the Serpent's Pass and making it service him a lot better. But yeah, if you were to delete the Serpent's Pass from the animation, it really wouldn't change a whole lot. And all you have to do is have him get over his anger so that he can be a happy boy when he's in Ba Sing Se, because Ba Sing Se, after they take out the drill and stuff, it's like Team Avatar, yay, but Appa's still missing. He still is worried about Appa and wants to try to find him, but he's not like obsessively depressed and like fixated on I have to find him after that. Again, this is like another thing that's like, if the one person or the one living thing from your past life, like his entire world was destroyed except Appa, and Appa gets stolen. That's like a huge thing. Like, imagine every person that you know and love has been killed except for, like, I don't know, you have your teddy bear, not even your dog. Like, you stop at nothing to get that dog back. Like, that's basically what this is, but even more, because Appa, I think, is supposed to be more intelligent than a dog. So you get the idea, I think. I've said it. I've beaten that dead horse. I've been filming for a long time. So the gang and the refugees discover that they are surrounded by a swarm of Fire Nation soldiers. So they pack up in the middle of the night and they head for their only escape route, the Serpent's Pass. They get to the pass, and after Aang cheekily takes out the sign that says abandon all hope, claiming that it will improve morale, they start their march. The only change I would have made to this, as happy as I am to see Aang being cheeky, I don't want to distract from what his current state of growth is supposed to be doing. I would have had Katara suggest that he take down the sign, and then after he does, Sokka can call him a show-off, but then Katara is the one who says it's good for morale. And then we would understand this is for both the refugees, but also for Aang himself. I would even show Aang being sort of surprised that everyone cheered for him, but don't drop the shadow of stress hanging over him until after dealing with the serpent. Like, he comes back from Bumi, and I want him to kind of stay in this sort of low state. And here, him showing off like this was a moment where it seemed to disappear briefly. You can still have him making jokes, but there should still be that shadow over him. So Appa is seen carrying Sai and 4 other adults while Teo flies alongside him, and then they leave behind the walking people. And now I'm going to admit, it could have been made more obvious that Appa is flying separately. Like, he's flying people ahead. He's not flying alongside these guys the whole time, and then suddenly he disappears during the serpent. You could have made it maybe Teo waves to Sokka and says, we'll see you at camp, because that's the next place that we see them, is Appa has flown these old people all the way to the next camp. I have a friend who could not get over that Appa is flying them, and then where did he go when the serpent attacked? And I was like, he's separate. He flew them across, like, away. And then the argument became, well, wait, why didn't he like fly them over there and then see that the serpent was attacking and come back? And I was like, it's entirely possible he was still flying and didn't even see the serpent thing happen because he's too far away to see it happening. And so that's why he didn't come back. And then the question was like, well, why did they all cross on the pass? Why didn't Appa just fly people back and forth? And there were so many of these arguments. Well, the reason he wouldn't do that is, number one, he's at his maximum load, and it was established in the animation that he can only carry 4 kids comfortably long distance, because when he had to carry 7 kids, he couldn't carry them, and it was faster to walk long distance. Remember, they walked basically out of the Fire Nation to the Western Air Temple because Appa couldn't carry all of the kids, 7 of them, and you got 5 adults and size telescope in there. So flying the one distance would be tough for him to take them that distance. Also, they're surrounded by Fire Nation. We just established and showed that the whole territory is overrun. So you wouldn't want to just sit there and wait for him to go back and forth. You would keep walking. Besides, you don't know why this Serpent's Pass is dangerous. Even in the animation, they were like,
"This is the Serpent's Pass? I thought it would be more windy, like a serpent." I guess they misnamed it.
Hey, the path winds like a snake. I bet that's why they call it Serpent's Pass.
Nothing gets by you.
You've got the Avatar, who's basically the Messiah, and you've got Katara, and you've got the Kyoshi warriors. I don't know why you would sit there and wait, thinking that this path along this cliff is going to be too dangerous. And then we have it established, even in the adventure, that, yeah, having benders and stuff with you is just fine. Like, you can take these people across easily. It was only dangerous because there was a serpent that they didn't know existed. So there was nothing to make them think maybe we shouldn't walk across. So they're walking the pass, and Sokka is mentioning that they have another consideration to add to their to-do list, and that is that everyone from Omashu has 1,001 scary stories about Zuko's sister Azula, who slashed and burned the city. And he brings up that she supposedly throws blue fire. I like how they brought the comedy in here, kind of also throwing in Sokka's knowledge of chemistry, because Katara and Aang is like, "What, do you think it's really cold?" And Sokka's like, "No, it's like really hot. It's so hot that it went all the way around the rainbow and came back to the start again." Like, I like that. That was good. Aang says that he will add Zuko's scary sister to the list, but we can see that it has stressed him out. And then he remarks there's so much to do and everyone is lagging, and he urges the group to move a little faster. And this is the first direct revelation that we're seeing, that Aang is feeling the pressure of having a lot of stuff to do and feeling like he can't get it all done. This is why I wanted it to be more clear at the beginning. Another reason why I wanted it to be more clear at the beginning, that he's not really confident in his water bending at that point. And then of course, Bumi not being willing to be his teacher would add to that. Like, well, now I have to find an earthbending teacher to the list. This was not something that was brought up in the animation as a major issue for Aang. He literally did not seem stressed about finding an earthbending teacher at all, even though he knew at that point that Sozin's Comet was coming and he better hurry up and find an earthbending teacher. Like, he should have told Bumi, actually there's this giant ass comet that's coming and it's gonna possibly be the ruin of the Earth Kingdom if I don't learn earthbending fast enough, so you better get your butt out of here. It's more important to teach me earthbending so I can defeat the Fire Nation than it is for you to stay here and wait for an opportunity to take back Omashu. But yeah, he does not seem like he is stressed about finding an earthbending teacher at all through the entire animation. So they're walking on the pass, and Aang notices that half of the group has stopped walking, and it's because there's a pair of kids who have stopped and are backing up the other half of the line. So he flies over and he asks if they're okay, and this is a really good scene. I didn't catch this until like my 3rd viewing. He asks the boy, "Hey, are you guys okay?" And the kid says, "We're going too fast and it's too high. I'm just a kid." This is basically a reflection of Aang to himself. And I like that this was testing Aang's patience. So like, this scenario is Aang is the pressures of the world and the kid is Aang. So when you flip it back to Aang, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing that here's the boy saying, "It's too high, I'm just a kid." And Aang himself feels the immense pressure of having to save the world with such a high responsibility. I'm just a kid, it's too high. And of course, Aang is just a kid. I know that he's like 14 or 15, but that's like a baby teen, I'm sorry. It's the same thing. So Aang ponders what the boy says. We can see it in the performance that he realizes he's putting too much pressure on this kid. It is scary. And he offers him his hand and says, "So am I, I'm just a kid too. Even airbenders can be scared of heights, okay? I'm not going to let you fall." And then he doubles down on this and tells all of the refugees, "I won't let any of you fall." And he patiently leads the kids by hand. And I really like this. It's like almost like this is the kind of struggle that this kid is having is the one that he is having. And he is offering that patience that he himself needs to give to himself. And here he is offering it to this kid. I don't think he's tied it to himself yet, but he has the capacity. We're seeing that. This is good storytelling right here. And again, this did not happen in anything like this didn't happen in the animation that I can think of. So as we pull back the camera from this scenario, we can see that following behind them is a troop of Fire Nation soldiers making their way a ways back on the path. In the animation, the Fire Nation was patrolling the pass in boats and attacks them. So here we're just replacing that with Fire Nation soldiers on foot. Then we get them coming up to a dip in the pass where it goes underwater, and I do like the comedy here. This is a more appropriate place for Aang to seem more relaxed. He has just done this thing for this kid. He's put himself into a slightly more patient sort of mindset because he had to be patient with this kid. So this is good for him to have a moment of comedy here. Better than what we had at the beginning where he said, you know, oh, it's good for morale.
Well, great. How are we supposed to get through this?
Aang and I are both waterbenders, Sokka.
Yeah, but we need an earthbender to bring the path up out of the... Oh, I knew he'd get there.
Well, this looks pretty deep. It's gonna take both of us. You ready?
If I'm not, we know who to blame. Just kidding, I got this.
Stop hanging out with Sokka.
And I do wonder if Sokka's joke was a poke fun at the loophole in the animation. So in the animation, Toph was with him at this point. And we do see her raise a piece of earth out of the water when they're in the bubble and then the serpent attacks. She raises that platform up. And I'm like, why didn't she just raise a platform all the way to the other side? If she could do that, couldn't she do all of this? So him saying, oh no, we need an earthbender to lift the path up. And Katara's like, Aang and I are both waterbenders. Like, we could just move the water. And he's like, oh, I do think maybe they were poking fun at that. But I mean, because Toph actually does lift a path out of water on 2 separate occasions in Lake Laogai. So why couldn't she do it here? But she's not here, so we don't have her. Anyway, I thought that the bending in this looked gorgeous. I loved this so much. Watching this on the big screen was a real treat. Like, this whole sequence was a real treat. The music just hits the spot here too. So they're crossing and we're ramping up the tension, and then the Fire Nation starts bombing them and they have to hustle out while Aang defends. They get to the other side just in time to see that the Fire Nation soldiers are fighting a huge serpent. And I have 0 complaints about this entire battle with the serpent sequence. I thought it was perfection, and it looks so good. Like this, I have not seen special effects like this in a TV show, like ever. Maybe Game of Thrones. And you know why? Because the guy who is one of the showrunners or executive producers of this show was one of the directors of Game of Thrones with the dragons and stuff. Like, that was his thing. So this looks spectacular. Everything was like an A+++. I could not believe I was watching this show and going, this is Avatar. See, I really liked the way that Koizilla looked in season 1. I never would have thought that they could do that, and then they did it so nicely. This was like a level above even that. It was so good. We get Aang telling everyone to help the others, and he's gonna take care of this. And before he takes off, Sokka tells him he better rush if he's going to go all Avatar state and take this thing out. Which, by the way, the subtitles for that section are kind of messed up. I've noticed a lot of flaws in the subtitles in this show. So I don't, there's a subtitle in the next episode where Katara says town, but the subtitle is Tau, T-A-U. What? Maybe it's just my TV. I don't know. Anyway, Aang says yes to the rush, no to the Avatar state. And we can see that Sokka picked up on something that he suggested did not sit well with Aang, like that suggesting the Avatar state was not a good thing. And again, like Aang swooping down and pushing a wave at the serpent and luring him into chasing him on his glider, the overhead shot of the serpent underwater, changing direction to go back after the people on land. I loved all of this. This looked so good. I don't think I can state that enough. I thought this was spectacular. And again, we get more comedy with Sokka freaking out that Aang is so tiny against this giant sea beast. That line actually was kind of a difficult line to articulate clearly. So applause to Sokka, who I'm sure that wasn't an improvised joke. I'm sure he had to say that, and it could not have been easy to say. Anyway, Suki commands her Kyoshi warriors to follow her up to help in attacking the beast, while Sokka freaks out at this new development, but he's got to go help Katara hustle everybody back out, all the other refugees. Aang sees the Kyoshi warriors moving into position on the shore, so he leads the serpent towards them. Again, a gorgeous shot of the serpent snapping at Aang in slow motion. Like, I don't usually go for the slow motion shots unless there's something really cool I need to see or like something specific I'm supposed to notice about it. That was a moment for this looks very cool, and yes, it looked very cool. It was like a moment that deserved the slow-mo, if you know what I mean. Jabbar Ricini, or Racine, I don't know how you say your name, but well done, sir. You are a visionary. You know what you're doing. This was just spectacular. I never would have thought we would get a scene like this. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that you were gonna have a scene that looks this good. First of all, in a TV show, and then for Avatar. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what they do in season 3. I want the lion turtles to be absolutely awe-inspiring. The lion turtle, singular. So the Kyoshi warriors throw their metal fans at the creature, trying to take out one of its eyes. It goes underwater. They think that, oh, they got it. But then it rises up out of the water there and roars at the warriors. And I love the roar. The sound design of the roar is great too. Again, like, well done. And the warriors just stand there. I didn't like that they just stand there, even though, like, of course, yes, this is a giant monster creature, but they just ran towards it and threw their fans at it when it was charging towards their direction. So I didn't quite buy that they would just stand there when it looks directly at them, it roars. I would have had them dive out of the way behind the rocks and it blasts steam at them while they're hidden behind the rocks. And that's why they're not covered in burns from head to toe afterwards. It's just on the arm, like, or, you know, like they took shelter behind the rocks. And so steam does get to them, but not as badly as it would as if they just stood there and took it full in the face. Aang smacks the serpent with a big air punch, like, which I loved. It looked so good. Dang, this looks so good. Then Katara goes running out to surf on an ice board and help Aang fight the serpent, and we get more comedic objections from Sokka. Like, this is, no complaints. This is just magnificent. Oh my gosh, and Katara fighting the serpent like this is good. So in the animation, they recreated a lot of the stuff from the fight with the serpent. They didn't need to, but they did. Like her trying to encase the serpent in ice and it breaking out. Her coming up with the idea for the whirlpool, like while she's out there, was good. In the animation, it's not clear who came up with the idea. We just cut back to Aang fighting the serpent and Aang and Katara fighting the serpent, and they are forming this whirlpool. So it's like, we don't know who came up with the idea. I actually always kind of assumed it was Aang. But here they're like, Katara is looking at the serpent, she's going around it, and she realizes, okay, I think maybe we can make it dizzy. Maybe we can get it caught up in this whirlpool. And she starts making the whirlpool. Aang sees what she's doing, lands on the water, and does the same thing. Like, she is the one who comes up with the water bending ideas, and he is the one who follows. Like, this is reinforcing that she's a creative thinker on her feet, that she is the one who is the master between the two of them when it comes to water. And oh my gosh, the way she blocks the steam and then throws it in her face. Like, the music here getting all intense when that happens too, it was so good. Like, this was just so good. This was an exciting scene to watch. Anyway, the serpent gets really dizzy and it sees Aang and tries to snap at Aang, but misses and then smashes its head into a rock and then rolls onto the shore and looks like it's dead. I was like, again, because I'm used to the animation, it's a kid's show, then coming to this and it smashing itself on the rock, which it did in the animation too. Its whole body slammed on the rock, but then it falls in the water and swims away. Here, they're like, an animal hitting itself so hard on the rocks that it abandons a fight like this, it would have to be pretty bad. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it died. But then I remember that picture from the still image that we got. And I actually, it was like weeks before this season came out, or this episode came out, or anything came out. And I was like, oh, I'll bet that they're gonna heal it. They're gonna hurt it and subdue it and then heal it. And that's the moment where it's looking at Katara and Aang, and then, which is exactly what happened. Not that I'm like, oh, I predicted this, but I mean, that was where my mind went, because I was like, why would the serpent be looking at Katara and Aang? It probably wouldn't do that before it attacks. So it would have to be after. And what happened in the fight? Well, we saw that it attacks and they basically beat the crap out of it. So it would make sense if it was like, sort of like a taming of a wild beast, or like you have conquered the beast and it recognizes your superiority. So I saw this is probably a moment like that. And then I assumed that they healed it from something, because if they've injured it so bad that it's not going to keep attacking them, and it just happened to be exactly what went down. There's certain things you do in storytelling that can give away what's going to happen. Not saying you have to always subvert expectations. That's not always good. Game of Thrones taught us that, the show. Aang and Katara go to where the creature is lying on the land, and Aang is horrified that he killed it, but Katara notices that it's still alive. And the only problem, you can see that it's still breathing and alive when Aang says, I didn't mean to kill it. I would have preferred that maybe it's completely still, And then Katara looks at it and we see it moving and she goes, no, I think it's still alive. I did see some other people saying that they had a problem with Aang being horrified that he's killed this serpent, but he didn't seem horrified to kill Fire Nation soldiers before. And I'm like, I don't remember him killing Fire Nation soldiers. I saw that he impaled a guy in the foot, but that's not killing him. If they wanted to show him killing them, he should have shown them impaling him in like the throat. We did see him throwing ice at them. Maybe they could have made it more obvious that he was only impaling them in non-vital places like their feet, but I mean, I thought that was obvious enough. Like for me, that was obvious enough. Also in the animation, it's not like Aang didn't kill people. He definitely did stuff that would have resulted in death. He flat out did kill the buzzard wasp. I mean, he chopped it in half. And I'm always surprised that Yang Chen didn't point that out to him when he's like, I've certainly never taken a life. I'm like, oh, really? Although I don't know if Yang Chen would know that. Would the avatars of his past lives know everything about what he did? No, they wouldn't, because they often had to ask him certain things. So anyway, whatever. Moving on. Aang wants Katara to use the water from the spirit oasis to heal the serpent. And this is a nice natural way to remind the audience of what this vial is, because it was given to her in season 1 in the live action. In the animation, she gets it at the beginning of season 2. So it's supposed to be like, okay, you'll remember this forever. But also we would get those little like, well, this didn't happen in the Serpent's past, but anytime that something came up in the animation that hadn't happened for a while, we would get that little previously on Avatar. Avatar Roku's voice every single time. Anyway, I said that it's a very natural way to remind the audience of what this healing water is. Katara says, no, we can heal it together. And Aang says, I can't, I haven't. But Katara cuts him off before he can say anything else. And she says, no, trust me, this is how you learn. And I would have changed this line because even Katara didn't learn by trying on a real patient. She got to use that doll in the healing hut with Yagoda showing her how to do it. I know it's how she learned other stuff. She would learn it on the fly. But I just want to make it more accurate for her and how you learn healing like this. So I would have said, trust me, you're ready, and I'm right here to help. You should at least try. This would tie in what she said to him in Kyoshi's Shrine in season 1, episode 2, where she said, imagine what would happen if you don't even try. It would be very subtle tie-in to that, but it works for me. Like, this could be a thing for Aang. Just try, don't give up. Don't say you can't, just try to do it. Do or do not, there is no try. Anyway, after that, I said the scene can play out exactly as it does. She gets him to help her and they heal the serpent. They said this was all excellent. I loved how they did it. If it was my show, I would have embellished this scene a little bit more to show that Aang and Katara start out both working independently, like so that, because they're doing sort of like a whole body movement with this healing. I would have shown that they're kind of asynchronous at first, but then right when you start hearing the heartbeat, or right before you start hearing the heartbeat, we see that they become almost synchronized together as they're healing the serpent, that it's not like they're moving like independently how they're doing, but we almost see like it becomes like a dance. And that would also kind of reinforce the whole, like we're bringing two people together physically in order to give the romance a boost, if that makes sense. I think that that would have been something very nice to see as well. Anyway, so you would see them sort of moving together as she's talking about letting the energy flow through you, and then you would hear the heartbeat of the serpent. I could see that they kind of were sort of doing that, but it wasn't like an obvious thing, like let's make it more obvious. You get the idea. Just a little more obvious. I love that the serpent raised its head and did something very animal-like. Every once in a while, my dog will look at me and go, and I'm like, are you trying to have a conversation with me? I like that the serpent seemed to do that. It gets up and looks at them and it makes these noises like it's trying to speak. But you know that this is just an animal thing that it does, and then it just swims away. I really liked that small touch, like an observation of real life animals, giving it to this animated serpent creature, animated as in CGI, and it just looked great. It adds to the realism. It looked fantastic. Like, again, Jabbar, thank you so much for taking on this project, because this looked spectacular. This is an Avatar-worthy moment right here. And I like how they close up this moment in the conversation between Aang and Katara, where he thanks her and tells her he couldn't have come this far without her, and he's so lucky to have her, also hinting very strongly that Aang is developing feelings for Katara. I'm just going to read this note. So you see, this whole moment was about Aang gaining confidence in himself. Even him attacking the sea beast with airbending that was not enough and having to join Katara to create a whirlpool with the water bending. And then working with her to heal. This was all about Aang internalizing the lesson that he can have some more confidence in himself and in his learning ability. It's almost like this whole moment was serving as the conclusion to his learning how to waterbend. He was not as confident, but now he is significantly more confident. And we get that confirmation in Aang's next scene with Sokka, where he just says it. And one last note. I like the way Katara says her line to Aang.
So lucky you're the one who broke me out that iceberg.
Yeah, you are pretty lucky, huh? Let's go.
So I live right in the middle of like half a dozen different American Indian reservations, and there is definitely a pattern of dialect that you only hear on the res. I mean, I spend almost every day on the res, actually, with my nephew. We take care of some horses. And you start picking up on some of these dialectic patterns. And the actress who plays Katara, I know she's like Mohawk or something. And there must be similar dialectic patterns up there, because I picked up on the way that she said, yeah, you are pretty lucky, huh? It just had that, it was like indigenous music. It was good. Like, I liked it. I was like, oh, for the first time, I heard a Water Tribe person talking like how I would imagine a modern Water Tribe person talking.
Yeah, you are pretty lucky, huh?
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Next, we have Katara healing Suki's burn, and the conversation here does a lot of work and does it very naturally. So this is the kind of dialogue that we really needed in season 1, and it was after this scene that I knew we were going to have more like it. So it's a scene that feels extremely natural, just like we have with the Painted Lady thing, although there wasn't a whole lot of work being done there, except that it was creating this legend for Katara to connect to. But here we have a lot of work being done in this conversation, but it's flowing very naturally. This is the conversation between Suki and Katara. So I saw this scene and I was like, this is going to be a good dialogue season. Like I said, there's always dialogue I can pick out and go, we could do this better. But this was an indication of a major shift. Here's what we get from this conversation. How and why did Suki and the Kyoshi warriors get here? Where are they going? We get how Suki and Katara feel about the changes in their own lives that really started when they met on Kyoshi Island. So we get both of their separate feelings about what their adventures have been. And we get how Katara sees that her beliefs in the Avatar were validated by meeting the Kyoshi warriors, and Sokka was only on this journey because of meeting Suki and the Kyoshi warriors. And we also get that Suki feels that the credit for getting all of these people to Ba Sing Se should go to Team Avatar. We get what kind of people both of these girls are. They are both helpers. They are driven to use their talents to help people. And they both recognize and respect each other for who they are and what they have been doing. We also get the start of seeing what Katara's internal journey is going to be in this season. She says that seeing how the Kyoshi warriors fought to defend the Avatar made her realize that she wasn't dumb for having hope that any one person can make a difference, which is something that's going to be very important to Katara's journey in season 2. One person by herself making a difference, even though she's not needed as the teacher, and really gets solidified here. Then Suki tells Katara that if she's done teaching Aang, which she kind of is, we just saw the conclusion of it in the Serpent's Pass, the Kyoshi warriors could use someone like Katara. And we can see that Katara is delighted and honored and perhaps seriously considering this. This is like the temptation for her, like, you could go this way. And she's like, maybe I could. Of course she doesn't. She takes a different path. But this is such a nice job of giving us all this information about the girls' past, about how they feel, about even some Sokka stuff, and then how they respect each other, and then Suki introducing the journey that Katara is going to go on for this season. Like, this is so nice. Katara isn't going to be needed for teaching Aang much anymore, so what is she going to do? How is she, any one person, going to make a difference and help people? And I liked every single line of this. Like, it was all doing so much work, and it felt so natural how it flowed. And as Suki walks off, This is like the best way to end the scene. Katara notices the painted lady blossoms on the roadside, like perfection. Like here she was just offered the Kyoshi warriors and she's like, wow, I like that. And what does she see? The painted lady. Like that's the thing that she should do, but she doesn't know it yet. This is nice writing, like very nice writing. I appreciate this so much. Okay, the next scene is kind of similar, but it's between Sokka and Aang. Sokka is complimenting Aang on how he defeated the Serpent, and again, this felt organic. This felt like a natural conversation to have at this point. It's the very next scene after. They've obviously put a little bit of distance between themselves and the Serpent, but it's not that much distance because we see that Katara only just now is healing Suki. I like that they specifically had this conversation, and I said, in an odd twist, Sokka from the animation always managed to show great empathetic resonance when members of Team Avatar got into serious conversations with him. Katara is the healer, Sokka is the understander. I really liked it when he played the therapist to Aang in Nightmares and Daydreams. Like, that was great. It was like they've understood what they had done before with all the other events where Sokka was basically the one listening to and understanding what other people were saying in confidence. He did it with Toph, he did it with Aang. It just happened a lot. Here we get the mini conclusion to Aang's small confidence issue that he was dealing with in this episode. We solidify the fear he has of going into the Avatar state. And I think I already explained, like, it's direct from the animation when he literally woke up from a nightmare about being in the Avatar state and how scary it was and told Sokka, I don't think we should go into the be forcing the Avatar state. And Sokka like, okay. And like, yeah, who knows better than you? Anyway, so back in the live action, we get Aang knows he can go into the Avatar state, but he wants to avoid it until he has full control over all 4 elements. And Sokka falls right into his problem solving and humor again, and Aang thanks him and then tries to return the favor of being a listening ear and inadvertently introduces us to Sokka's big journey for this season, which is opening up to his closest friends who love him about how he is struggling to deal with Yue. And he's doing the one thing that Yue herself even pointed out back in the Spirited Away episode in season 1, when she said, do you always make jokes when you don't want to talk about something? Because he walks away from this making a joke about how he's busy making a list of things, you know, how to defeat the Fire Nation in 10 easy steps, 100 easy steps. And you can see that Aang can see what he's doing too. So back to one quick thing that was sort of lightly mentioned here, but it is deviating from the animation. Aang had no control in the animation of when he would go into the Avatar state. But here it's not exactly saying that he knows how to make himself go into it, just saying that he knows he can go into it, but he's not even going to try and make it happen until he's got more control over the other elements. We're gonna have to get more into this later on because this episode review is getting very, very long, but one of the things that I was asked about after season 2 by some of my Netflix friends was, what did you think about us omitting Guru Patik? And my first response was the thing that I always thought of season 2 in the animation was, I don't think it's the worst thing ever, because quite honestly, Aang does not do the one thing that he's supposed to do in order to master the Avatar state, and yet he still masters the Avatar state. He's supposed to give up Katara, but he never gives up Katara. He's still with Katara at the end of all of this, so he never gave her up. So what was the point of that? Now you can still have him and Katara have their struggle where he wants to get with Katara and she's the one saying, no, I don't think so. We're in the middle of a war. Like, there's just too much craziness going on. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody when we're all doing all of this. Where there was more tension. I mean, for me, that episode of the Ember Island Players, when he forces a kiss on Katara, or, you know, it's not really forced, but he kisses Katara when she basically just told him, I don't want to be with you. And then she's like insulted and upset that he would do that, even though she just told him, like, I just told you no, and you just did that. And then he's like, oh my gosh, what an idiot am I? I actually really hope they'll do that, because that would be such an interesting thing to explore, that Aang is just not making the right decision here. And he thinks like, oh, maybe this will change things. And it was like the wrong thing to do. But yeah, so back to Guru Patik. My response was that cutting out the chakras and Guru Patik, this is a huge side quest that would have felt very out of place. And honestly, even in the animation, it was a bit like, where did this guy even come from? But because he doesn't do the one thing in the animation that he's supposed to do to master the Avatar state, and yet he still masters the Avatar state, it kind of seems like one of those loophole type things that when you get to live action might seem a little more obvious. Like, if he's told you have to give up the love of your life if you want to master the Avatar state, and then we show him mastering the Avatar state but then still being with Katara, people are going to go, wasn't he supposed to give her up? Anyway, we see Sokka walk off, and I was very excited to see this moment because I knew that they weren't dropping the Yue trauma. Like, it was kind of obvious with, like, it was hinted at with Suki, but it could also have just been him liking her and being like a little awkward around her, but also being grateful that she's still alive. Here it was like, this is a Sokka and Yue problem that is still haunting Sokka. Back in the refugee camp, we see Sai setting up his telescope, or it is set up, and Chong is playing his Tibetan lute. And Katara comes walking into the scene with Aang and Suki right behind. And I'm like, where were they? I mean, they could have just been at the next campfire or whatever. But it was the dialogue that threw me a little bit. She's basically going like, wow, I'm glad that we all survived. You did a good job out there, Aang. And it's kind of like one of the, this conversation would have been good when they were walking in that field on the road or whatever, where Suki and Katara were talking and Sokka and Aang were talking. That was more like immediate after the fight. For it to be here, it feels a little like, why are you still talking like you having this conversation for the first time? So I would have just changed it to make it seem like they were just off looking at Suki's burn again, or other burns that she has maybe. And like Katara had just given another lesson to Aang. Like, you could show Suki even like fixing her sleeve or something, her other arm or something. And Katara saying burns like that just barely go deeper than the skin, so they're a good wound for you to learn on. You did great with the serpent. Burns are a snap by comparison, just something like that, you know, like that was the subject. That now that they've gotten to a place where they're stopping, now she can like, we're gonna explore wounds that you can heal. I did like Sokka's prank on Katara, getting her back for the frozen fist thing. And then she ends up sitting next to Aang, who I do sometimes wish the camera would let us like see things, not let us see things, because obviously you can see it if you look at it, but draw more attention to things like how Aang seems like he's very not uncomfortable, but you can see a shift in his body language when Katara sits next to him. Yeah, and I have zero complaints about how the rest of the scene all unfolds. Sai tells them about the astronomical research the Fire Nation was having him do, which of course they would, because he's like the inventor, the scientist, he's the man of learning. And he reveals the comet and even shows it to them through the telescope. And then Aang starts having a panic attack at this sudden, extreme shift in timeline. Like, you got a lot less time than you thought. And that was something that he just kind of got over a little bit. He's gotten his confidence back, and suddenly you have no time. Everybody's blurting out their ideas about what they should do next, and then Aang suddenly announces that they're changing their plans. They're going with the refugees to Ba Sing Se to tell the Earth King about the comet so that that way the Earth Kingdom can like defend itself or help prepare. This is definitely bringing in the genocide more, and it is fixing that big problem with Sozin's comet basically not being an issue for anybody. Like, everyone talks about how that's not why they went to Ba Sing Se. They went to Ba Sing Se to tell them about the eclipse so that they could go and attack the Fire Nation. Well, wouldn't it be even more important to tell them that the Fire Nation is like a huge threat on this one particular day, and you guys are probably going to get your asses handed to you just like the Airbenders did? I feel like that should have been the motivation to get to Ba Sing Se faster. Go tell the biggest force of resistance to the Fire Nation, you better watch out because something bad is about to happen. And yet they never brought it up in the animation. So this fixes that and also gives a much better reason to go to Ba Sing Se, in my opinion. Again, I really can't get over how people say like that we're supposed to go to Ba Sing Se for the eclipse. And I'm like, they weren't even going to go to Ba Sing Se in the animation. Like, they weren't going to go tell anybody about the comet. For 21 episodes, they did not mention it at all. They pretended like it wasn't even a thing. And then suddenly they get to the library and they find out about the Day of Black Sun, and they're like, oh, we should probably do this before that comet. Remember the comet that we learned about, you know, a whole season ago? Not even half a season. It was almost a full season prior. Because remember, the library happens 2 episodes before the Serpent's Pass and the Drill, which is the midway episode in season 2. And we learned about Sozin's Comet in the second half of the midway of season 1. It's a full season's worth of episodes, and it just wasn't an issue. They didn't think that they should tell anybody about it. Anyway, I like how this scene played out, and I like how Aang was shown to be panicking again, but cast aside his training to insist that they go to the Earth Kingdom pronto. I also like the small moment with Katara and Sokka looking worryingly up at the sky where they just witnessed the approaching comet. Now, this next little scene between Sai and Amida, I was like not a big fan of this, but it does serve as establishing why Amida will be a useful tool, a storytelling tool going forward. She's got this connection with Sai, so she's going to know where he is. She's also going to be part of the leadership of the refugees, so she's going to know where everybody is going to be at. And it also sets the tone and the pattern for the next couple of scenes that are about to happen. This is like a transition scene. Like this whole scene, and it's very short, which is nice, is a little transition scene. But basically, yeah, Sai confesses to Amida in his own way that he would like to be closer to her, and she obviously accepts. So we're setting this into the world might end. This is my last shot. I'm not going to waste my life. I'm going to be with the person I want to be with kind of tone. And that's what we get in the next 2 scenes. But yeah, I do have to applaud the writers for doing something. I thought that they were introducing this extra character and we're going to have all these stories around them. And I was like, oh my gosh, why are we doing this? Like, why are we giving time to an extra character? But she alone fulfilled very useful purposes throughout the rest of the season. So she was a very well-used character. So good job. And you could not have used Teo for what she ends up having to do. So like if Teo's dad was suddenly disappeared, he definitely would have gone out trying to find the dad. So for her to be like, she's with the refugees, she's in Ba Sing Se in the third ring. Yeah, you get the idea. Next, we've got these 2 really nice scenes. They are character breathing moments. And I've already explained what character breathing is, but there's no progression. These are moments for the audience to consider the current state of the characters. And first we have Sokka approaching Suki, who's looking out over a view of the night. And he asks if she's told the other Kyoshi warriors yet about Sozin's Comet, obviously. And she says she hasn't. And then Sokka starts to walk away, but he reconsiders and then walks back up to stand next to Suki and sort of brokenly asks if he can just stand there with her for a second. It's a very vulnerable moment. It's the first voluntarily vulnerable moment that he is sharing. When it was earlier with Aang kind of surprised him with turning it back on him, like, hey, if you ever want to talk about what happened at the North with Yue. And his reaction, Sokka's, was to run away from that, like, oh, I'm getting away. But here he is choosing to go and share a vulnerable moment with Suki. She says, of course you can stay here with me for a second. And it's obvious that she sees that it was a hard thing for him to ask, like that there's something troubling him. And then we see him take her hand and they hold hands, just kind of acknowledging, they look at each other then and acknowledge that this is the most that I want, and I just need this, just this. I like this. See, again, silence with letting the actors just do the storytelling with their faces, with their body language and the blocking, like, very nice. And we see the 2 of them looking out over the view. I said this was a really good thing that they didn't have the moon directly visible in this, but you can see moonlight, just like barely, like on the surface of the water. I do really like that the first time we see Sokka like in the presence of the moon, that he's avoiding it. Like we see him notice the moon a couple times and like not want to look at it. Here, all I can think is that's the moon just above the frame of the image we're seeing. I would have preferred if we just saw a sky so lit up with stars. If you've ever been out in the country, the night sky is just, it's so bright with stars, even if there's no moon. As a matter of fact, if there is no moon, you see more stars. So I would have kind of liked that. We should have done that. And I think we could have gotten away with it, like a very bright night, starry sky. Just me. Yeah, because I want that first moment that he chooses to look up to the moon to be the one in the planetarium that we get in episode 6. Anyway, the next scene we have is Katara by a fire repacking her travel bag, and Aang is sort of seeing her as he's approaching from a distance, and you see him gather some courage and then walk up to her. And he's very obviously about to tell her how he feels. So just like how Sokka almost told Suki how he feels. Well, he didn't really, but he did the vulnerable thing. You see that Aang is about to do this. but he just doesn't have the guts, even though all of this other stuff happened to help him gain some self-confidence and courage. But then of course the Comet thing happened and now we're just like piling on the pressure. And oh my gosh, I just love that we got Avatar's Love. That music that you're hearing from the animation that we're hearing here is a theme song I wanted to hear so bad in season 1. I think I mentioned it in one of my reviews, but it's called Avatar's Love, but you mostly hear it when it's the kids on Appa being a family, like a quiet moment. And I always thought it was odd that they call it Avatar's Love, but like they're using it here as his theme. And I really like it. It's such a beautiful little lullaby melody. It's got kind of a John Williams feel to it. But yeah, this was what we got in The Cave of Two Lovers and The Fortune Teller, where we saw that Aang has a one-sided crush on Katara. And it isn't until later that we see the reciprocal interest being introduced to Katara, just like in the animation. It happened in The Fortune Teller and it happened in The Cave of Two Lovers, where we don't see her kind of looking at him in that way until it is suggested in The Fortune Teller and then in The Cave of Two Lovers when she is like, maybe we're supposed to kiss, and you know, she's like embarrassed to suggest that, and then Aang blows it. There's a funny scene. That was a very funny scene in The Cave of Two Lovers, but they did a nice job here. And again, it was like, he didn't say anything. It's just, it came through in the music, in the setting, in the expression, and the movement of the camera pushing in like you've got something to say. It's one of those like silence is golden moments, and this really was golden. I like this so much. But he just can't bring himself to say the thing, and he walks away shaking his head, and Katara's just kind of confused. And that is the end of the Team Avatar arc. And I just love how they ended it here on this nice quiet moment here. And then of course in the episode we actually jump to Zuko and those guys. Well, actually we jump to Azula. It's a little intense. And then we go to Zuko and we end on kind of like that, oh man, he's walked away from Iroh and with such horrible, hurtful words. But this first episode was just so impressive to me. And after watching all of the episodes of season 2, I actually think that this one was one of the roughest written, but it was still excellent. First chapters of stories are extremely difficult to write, by the way, especially if there's been a time gap between like a book 1 and a book 2, because you have to know, how much do I remind the readers of what's been going on? How do I fill them in on stuff without it feeling like exposition in the dialogue and whatnot? Like, how do I make how do I convey information like that to the audience? And then how do I also introduce what their journeys are going to be? It's very, very hard to write first chapters. As a matter of fact, most of the time with my clients, I end up telling them to completely cut a lot of their first chapters. It's a tough thing to do. So anybody who's able to do it and then still make their first chapter work, like, you know that they've accomplished something great. And this was just excellent. I am so pleased with what they've done with season 2. To me, there were specific things that had to be fixed in season 1. And I said, if you don't fix these things, like the dialogue, the blocking, the cutting out more plot to allow for character breathing, and then I really wanted it to just look better without, you know, the whole volume lighting thing going on. And they fixed every single one of those things. So I watched this season all the way through a couple of times, and then I watched it with my mom. And it was when we got to the start of episode 2 that she turned to me and she's like, I think this just became like an actually really good show. And she's somebody who can't watch the animation. Like, she does not get I've tried to make her watch it. She literally has just fallen asleep during it and go, I don't like this. I don't get it. And I'm like, okay. She loved this. And she's a very hard woman to please. And this resonated with her. And I'm thinking that people who have seen the animation are going to struggle to see past all the stuff that was cut and notice the things that they're doing that are excellent. I get it. Nobody's saying that the animation is not as, like, nobody's saying that this is better than the animation. But did they honor the source material? Were they able to reduce the animation into 1/3 of the story, but still hold that soul? I think they did it. So anyway, we're gonna keep going with episode 2 next. I hope that you'll come along. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's totally free for you. And for me, it might, I don't know, boost this video in the algorithm. You get the idea. Otherwise, if you're feeling generous and you have the means, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. Hope to see you in the next one. Be good to yourself. At the season 2 premiere, I saw all the actors were posing for these nice professional photos, and Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, whose Uncle Iroh, was there posing with this gorgeous green and gold tea set, and I just like...
I can get you one.
And so I have one too now. And I love it, it's so cute. Not many people know this about me, but I collect tea sets. I've collected them probably for the last 20 years-ish. Maybe Uncle Iroh was an influence in my life, other than just me thinking he's a fantastic character. But yeah, I have a whole bunch of them, and now I've got this one too. I'm so happy.